Top Gang with your host, Sammy Castro. And for our very first episode, we have with us Gunnery Sergeant Chris Sonnabend. So here we go. So first off, I want to say thanks for agreeing to do this. You're actually the first guinea pig, canary in the coal mine. But you know, I've had this idea for a while, like I mentioned, and I was, kind of chewing on it, because I guess since about 2012 timeframe, I started listening to podcasts a little bit more regularly, and I like the long form conversations. I thought that there was a lot of value to that. But fairly recently, I've been chewing on the idea that there's a lot of smiles and cries along the way to get to, the point that we're at. And in some of those interactions that I've had with our peers, there's been nuggets that, if I were a sergeant to have heard two master sergeants having this conversation, what that would have meant to me. And, can only imagine what value would be gained from, junior knuckleheads in some Radbin or, elsewhere, to be able to kind of have some of that insight. How we interact, how we talk to each other, especially having such, a history. Mm-hmm. And, I talked to a few guys, and they thought, well, I don't know. And then, but when push came to shove, and we actually, kind of explored a little bit further, when you started, because curiosity would, well, what would you talk about? What would you talk about? And a lot of that is, I guess, kind of centered on finding that balance.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you go in a deep conversation with a friend on like a car ride or something, and then you get done with it, and you're like, man, I wish somebody would have captured that,
Right. So fairly recently, Scoggins and Simmons and I traveled from San Angelo to San Antonio together.
Oh yeah.
When we were doing the learning analysis for the 91 course, and some of those conversations were deep, and when you have an opportunity, with no judgments, to just really kind of say what's on your mind and work through some of those things that have been, pressing upon you. When you've got time to kind of decompress and you're away from, the turmoil that your daily routine can include, to just reflect, but not, in isolation with your brothers. And it was helpful for me because Kevin was looking at retirement right around the corner, and Scott was kind of chewing on what he was going to do, and eventually he decided, in the course of that conversation, and I think a lot of other things as well, that he was ready to drop papers of his own. And for me, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, these are two solid dudes, and they're gone from the field. And of the three of us, I'm still, trucking along. How much wisdom has been just kind of floated off into the distance, for no one to really pick up and capture or pass on. And a lot of it too is that no one gets to where we are, as humble as a position as a master sergeant can be, without help.
Absolutely.
And I think we've talked about this quite a bit, and I told you I would tell you my Joe Black story.
I was thinking about this morning when I was driving, and I was like, just kind of trying to figure it out. I'm like, what could it be? And my mind was bouncing from spectrum to spectrum,
Yeah. So I was just coming off of the MEU in '08 and was set for orders because I kept getting. I'd been at Rabin for 5 years, and
Is that the one that you're on with Buck and Matt?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
yep, and one of our peers, I had orders to San Antonio, and I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, Liz was being in education. She was already eyeballing administration positions, and kind of getting things, ready to roll out, head back to Texas. And I was in the ops section, and one of our peers walks up to me and says, Sammy, I just want you to hear it from me first, that I took your orders to San Antonio. and I was like, what the fuck? I mean, the Stones, right? But the honesty, the integrity, and I could respect that. So I didn't get confrontational. Hate the game, not the player.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Black was on deck cutting orders on one of his road trips, and so I found him, and what the fuck, Top? And he's like, listen, stud, I need somebody at the schoolhouse. I'm still sending you to Texas. You're just gonna go to San Angelo instead. And I'm like, I've already done instruction. I've done evaluation. I've done training. He said, it's not the same. You're gonna go to a formal schoolhouse. It's the same. I didn't know then. I didn't know any better. And I was just so excited about getting a chance to go back to San Antonio. I went to college there.
Oh, yeah.
Had a lot of family there. Went to St. Mary's University. Majored in philosophy of all things. Ask me how that's working for me. and he,
though, it's kind of at the time I could see how it could be like not a smack in the face, but you're kind of like, oh man, what's this going on? Why can't I go? Because you're probably thinking, I want to go somewhere operational or somewhere where there's a mission. Why doesn't Joe like me? But knowing Joe now and being separate and disconnected from it, that's actually a very big compliment that he was trying to put you in a position to be in front of the junior guys. You know what I mean? Like the first influence that they take is an MOS instructor, or people around that.
That was exactly what he told me.
Yeah. Did you take it as an insult at first, though?
Well, yeah. I mean, for me, think about it, bro. 5 years at Rabin, go. I had the 2 years in that at SOTG, and it's still go at SOTG, even though you're not the training audience, you're the instructor evaluator, and I thought I was getting benched.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Especially in 2008 when you figure what's going on in the world.
Right. I still hadn't done an Afghanistan deployment at that time. I'd only did Iraq twice, maybe, if you count the MEU. But I was frustrated and at my wit's end trying to articulate to him what it meant for me to go to San Antonio and why I needed to be there and a bunch of other reasons. And he says, and one of the things I said was, anything this battalion has asked me to do, I've done to the best of my abilities. And you can look at my fit reps top. I've held it down, and he says, that's exactly what the sergeant major, the first sergeants, master sergeants, the gunnies, anybody I've talked to about you has told me that you've done an excellent job and I should give you your heart's desire. But in the very same breath, they said if there was one person they could send to the schoolhouse to replicate, to clone, and make more of and send back to the fleet, it'd be you. And so off to San Angelo I went. But
the death sentence,
right? But towards the end of our conversation, I said, now I've got. I see what you're saying, Master Sergeant, but now I've got to go explain this to Liz. And he says, where's she at? I said, well, she teaches here on base, but she's actually in the parking lot right now waiting on me. Because I told her that our orders got changed. And she came by here so we could talk face to face about it. And he said, bring her in here. I was like, I'm not fucking doing that. Like, what Marine brings his wife to come talk to the monitor?
Yeah. He was probably like, all right, let's go sit in the car with her then, you know?
No, he says, listen to me. I want to do this. I want her to hear it from the Marine Corps. I want her to hear it from the monitor. I want her to hear it from me. And I'm like, be careful what you ask for. She'll talk to you. And he says, I've had husband-wife teams stacked outside my hatch, ready to clear.
Yeah.
So bring her in here. And so I did. And in the most human fashion possible, he expressed and shared with us some of his personal experiences and times in which his wife had a heartache with PCS orders, and how things, it's not always easy, but it's how it is, and it made an impression on Liz, an impression that she still holds dear to this day, and there's times, quite often, where she's brought it up to junior spouses and explained to them, sometimes things don't look like it's a good fit, but then when you get there and you make the most of it, because that's what we do, and it becomes home.
Yeah.
And San Angelo was one of those places for us. And I'd say about maybe midway through my tour, I made it a point, he had rotated out as a monitor, to call him and to tell him I needed to be here at this time. And for a lot of reasons that I probably can't get into right now. But what eventually happened was my father passed away while I was there. Had I been somewhere else, I would not have had the leeway that I did in San Angelo to take care of him.
Yeah.
Unexpectedly, at the age of 50, he had an aneurysm and just deteriorated,
Oh, wow.
quickly. But I was on hand and to spend those last few moments with him, and eventually had to make the decision because the extended family was having a hard time processing, as you can imagine, to remove him from life support, because I know that's not how he wanted to live. Because they were talking about hospice and all this other stuff, and my dad,
Yeah.
he's too proud of a man
Yeah.
to live like that. But had it played out differently, who knows? But just being at that point in that place, and also like just some of the friends that we made there, the roots that we put down in San Angelo. So when I went back there, recently with Scoggins and Simmons, it was like being home again.
Yeah.
So Black will always have a dear place in my heart, just because of the way in which he treated Liz and took the time out. I mean, I know some staff and COs that would not fucking do that.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even entertain it.
Joe is obviously, anybody that knows me knows that Joe's a big part of my career and my life, and a lot of, you take everything from all different guys that you meet, and you throw out the bad, keep the good, and kind of mold yourself into whatever type of dude you're going to be in the community. And a lot of what I am is kind of the mentorship that I seen from Joe over at MARSOC when we were there, and the way he handled guys. And I was just talking about it the other day with one of the guys here, is with Joe, you never felt that leader subordinate feeling. You felt like a pure, almost warrior culture, and he wanted to take care of you because he wanted the tribe to be good, and if there was going to be a problem there, it was going to affect everybody.
Like a wizened elder that knew that he was going to go off one day, and what would remain would be what he left behind. Yeah,
but had a very direct way of telling you too. You know what I mean? To where sometimes you're almost like, man, I can't be a bitch because Joe just put it. To go back to what you were saying before too about the MOS instructor stuff. I did the same thing. I went down to me and Loretta when we first got married. I got off the second MEU where you were our SOTG instructor when I was the RRT team leader. We went out to Iraq and we got back and we executed orders down in Pensacola. And the whole time I kind of, at first, the first little bit there, I felt this, I got out of the game too early in my prime, damn it. And, when you're an MOS instructor, there's really, you don't get to see the satisfaction because when you train the guys, they're gone. You don't get to really see what they turn into. But fast forward now, like I'm here with most of the guys that, I train.
Right.
But, a year passes by and you're doing the same thing you were doing the year before and, you're starting to feel like, oh, man, crap. But looking back at it now, if we would have started our marriage out in a spot that wasn't like an MOS school to where you could build that good family foundation, we wouldn't have survived the storm that was 8.5 years at MARSOC after. We wouldn't have. And we went, once we moved out of there, and I look back on it too, I was actually thinking about this a few years back, and I was like, how silly was I as a sergeant thinking that I was out of the game because I was going to go spend 2.5 or 3 years. I look at it now and it seems like 2 days, and
Right.
and I try to say that to some of the guys now when they're re-enlisted and they're like, I don't want to go here or I don't want to go there because I don't want to become irrelevant. And it's like, even hate to throw this evil out there, but even getting histed or whatever, it's not the end of the line. You could go out for a few years and come back and recover. I guess depending on when that is that it happens to you, though.
Right.
Yeah, but like you were saying there, that family foundation, building that and having it strong, where you come home every day and all that type of stuff. Because usually the way that I've seen it with dudes' careers is once they do that for a while, the next duty station, the wave's gonna come. They're gonna get operational again. And if you're just going from, there's not too many guys at our rank or girls at our rank that have been married for a long time and stayed there. You know what I mean? Especially through the time frames that we were operational.
Right.
Because, maybe it was because they didn't do that and they just bounced from battalion to battalion. I don't know. But there's you could name them, right? There were 5 or 6 couples maybe in the community that.
Yeah, Liz and I got married right after boot camp, and I got stuck for 3 years at DLI as a clearance hold. And, so when I finally checked in the battalion, once I made it through Goodfellow, I had a hash mark, 4 ribbons, was a sergeant, hadn't done anything. And but like you said, that foundation, we had the first year of Enrique's life there together, uninterrupted, no deployments, nothing. And yeah, that stability was kind of like the bedrock for, like you said, the what was to come, because
Yep.
Rabin was go, 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 go.
Yep.
But that's what I loved about it.
Yeah. Yep. And then, just in this community, it's not something that you could go to a school and learn. There's so much to know that it almost has to become a lifestyle, And so actually, funny, I think a lot of these conversations are going to revolve back to something that Joe taught us. But when we were creating MDIOC, a few of us over at MARSOC.
And what's that?
It's the multidiscipline Intel Operators course. So it's, all the different ints that go over there. They go through a pipeline kind of. And he kind of gave us the freedom to run with it and create what we wanted to out of it. And we had some guidelines, obviously, and learning analysis took place, but we were able to, I think it's a pretty legit course. Most of the people, and then, BPG took it over, right? We made it kind of a pilot course, and then Brian took it over, and you know how he is. He's just insane, man. So they added tons of stuff in and just took the course through the roof, A lot of praise with it now. But when we were initially starting it, I was building out like the coursework for it, and I was like, man, there's not enough time to get all this stuff in, because I was an MOS instructor, so I'm thinking, they show up at 9 and blah, blah, blah. And Joe's like, no, there's 24 hours in a day, man. we could keep them here. If they can't retain it and move on to day 2, they don't need to be in SOF, And I'm like, wow, that's a great way of looking at it, And then he would go on his rants, and me and Billy would always say it all the time, like repeating it afterwards. But he's like, if you're going to be good in this job field, specifically at an operational radio battalion or a front end thing like SOF, we say you got to be all in all the time. And then that's when we started messing around with like the ham radio stuff. We're building all these weird, HF antennas, trying to hide them in our attics,
Right.
Doing all this crazy stuff, and it just kind of became a lifestyle. It was everything we did, everything we talked about was the job stuff and the knowledge with it. And I think you kind of saw that come out in that course with everybody that came. And guys were like so committed to building that course that like people were calling me from forward. You know, other MARSOC guys call me from forward and being like, "Hey man, I hear you're developing a course. We got to make sure we're showing them this and teaching them that." And I'm like, "Man, what are you doing?" He's like, "Just got back from an op, getting ready to go on another one." But like he's concerned that the new
Right.
guys are gonna mess this up or mess that up, you know. Yeah, so it was kind of good seeing all that, and you know, but yeah, so 24 hours a day, you know, all in all the time. It's kind of the way we ran with it, you know.
How did you transition from the RP community, to the MARSOC? Was it just smooth as silk, or was there a lot of growing pains? Because I remember at Second SOTG when they came in and we started working on the medals and the mission essential task list and seeing what is the intelligence capability that needs to be at MARSOC. And there was a lot of talk about why we were now going to play with SOCOM after all these years of holding out. And of course, Det 1 was its own, you know, urban legend or Marine Corps legend prior to that. And, you know, any of the guys that were even whispered in the same sentence as Det 1 were automatically SIGINT demigods. But what was that initial stand-up like for you?
I think it kind of shaped a lot of how I look at training operators now in the job field. And to be as blunt as I can about it, one thing that I learned there is figure it out yourself. When I checked in, Crawdaddy would give you a quick little spiel of here's how it goes. And before he could get, you know, 3 sentences out, he told you, you're an analyst, a communicator, a collector. Nobody's going to do any of that other stuff for you. You got to do it all. You know what I mean? So there was no egos of the, you know, I'm a high and mighty collector or anything. You had to be great at all 3. Because we had little amount of guys and we're pushing out. I mean, when I showed up, I got a funny story about when I checked in the MARSOC that I'll tell here in a little bit. But when I showed up, I was already a team leader slated on the board. And it was just me, my name up there. And there was like, at the time it was 5-man teams that were going out with the company. And there was 4 dashes underneath it. So I was talking to Crawdaddy, he gave me the whole analyst, communicator, collector, independent operator, figure it out on your own, learn it on your own, nobody's going to hold your hand type of thing, which was great freedom, you know. And I'm like, hey, Crawdaddy, quick question for you. Who's the other 4 guys on my team? He points to the company that's in Afghanistan and points at the bottom 4 on that one. He goes, those dudes, they were coming back, jumping over to the other team and then going out, you know.
Nice.
Yeah, that I actually didn't end up going out on that team. A bunch of the other dudes did because a pop-up RFF came up and I got the opportunity to deploy with my good friend Guy Waybrick.
Yeah.
And we went out to...
Is he still putting those ridiculous profile photos on Facebook?
Oh yeah, the little weird kids and whatnot. Yeah, I don't spend much time on Facebook, but I see. I hit him up on Messenger once, and I saw the little picture of the guy with the glasses, and I was like, "What is this, man?" Yeah.
So checking at MARSOC, what was that like?
Oh, oh man. So we drive up to Lejeune, and it was kind of flying out at that point because I checked in March and my son was born at the end of January. So we got, you know, newborn, dog, a 100-pound dog at the time, all this stuff, moving it from Florida to North Carolina.
What breed of dog is 100 pounds?
He was a boxer, but he was an animal.
What?
He was huge, yeah. He was awesome. Not fat, like thick, you know.
Okay.
And so we get up there, get in the house, tons of problems with TMO and furniture not there, and we got, you know, all this weird stuff sleeping on the floor. So I get my I got to go check in right away, right? So I throw my alphas on and I'm like, man, my hair looks a little long, you know. It wasn't anything bad, man. It'd be like a picture of Wednesday style haircut, right? So
Wednesday for who?
No, yeah. You're already pushing it, and now it's Wednesday, right? Yeah. So I get my alphas, and I show up to Crawdaddy opens the door for me. We come in, and kind of like trying to take it all in. Didn't really sleep much the night before because we got out of the car, got everything all set up, and he's phenomenal about no matter where anybody's ego is, or even if they don't have an ego, taking you back down to bit level on things, you know, and then starting over, rebuilding you back up. So I checked in, and it was actually the first time I met him. I heard about him a bunch before, but you know, RRP guy. So obviously I had some gold wings going in. Did 2 combat deployments before that, so you know had a little bit of experience. And looking back at it now, probably not shit worth of experience, you know. But walked in, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" Blah blah blah. So if you didn't know this about Crawdaddy, you can't swear around him.
I know this about.
So you know where this is going, right? So I never met him before. And the night before, or I was talking to Guy before I was going in, and he set me up, man. He's like, yeah, Crawdaddy's good. You know, he's great, dude. He's going to take care of you. He's as vulgar as they come, though, man. So you got to, like, get on his level. So, I mean, from opening the skiff door to me to even walking down, the company commander there was a lieutenant colonel at the time, right?
Yeah.
To even walking down to that office to check in, I probably dropped 8 or 9 F-bombs, right? And so he's probably just stewing, you know, stewing. And so we do the whole thing, meet with the colonel and everything. And then finally, she rolls out the 0291 guy that was there. I don't remember his name now, but he rolled out, and it's just me and Crawdaddy in there, and he's like kind of filling out my check-in sheet, telling me where I need to go and all that stuff. And as soon as the door shuts, he looks up at me, and his face is deathly serious. And he was like, you know, you can't be showing up making us look bad without a haircut. You know, and as he's saying this to me, his hair is way longer than mine, right? But, you know, I see that you got, you know, those wings don't mean anything except that you parachute. You know, it doesn't make you special. We're nothing special here. We're just good collectors, and we need to focus on that. There's no cool guy stuff here. Check your ego, you know, going back and forth with it. And then I think I said something like, oh, fuck, Crawdaddy, I don't, you know, think I'm a tough guy or anything. And he's like, you don't need to be using those words to get your point across. And I was upset because I wanted to make a good, you know, impression on him. I heard so much about him, and I'm walking out of there
Right.
going to get my hair cut and do the rest of my check-in, and I'm like, man, Crawdaddy probably thinks I'm a turd. You know, I got to step it up. And went back in after that. There was a really hard course that was starting right away, and just went into it full on. You know, like I'm going to be the best guy that's here, hands down. You know, and it was like a couple weeks later, we were out eating, and Guy was like, hey, how'd that check-in go? I was like, man, you didn't tell me. He's like, oh, dude, you can't be cussing around Crawdaddy. You know, like, you bastard. Yeah. I did something to get him back that was pretty funny. I don't remember what it is now, though. It'll pop in my head.
To get waved right back.
Yeah, I got him good, too. I don't remember what it was, though.
Yeah, I'd heard nothing but great things about Crawdaddy, and I didn't actually meet him until he was getting ready to do his workup prior to going out on that first rotation from MARSOC. And they were going to use us to script and provide the scenario for those guys. And I can't think of who it was that was on that team with him.
It was a bunch of new guys, fresh out of school.
And none of those guys were even anywhere near being RT.
No, they were out of MOS school.
Right. So
Yeah.
I want to say it was Jensen, but Jensen I think was on Doucet's team.
Oh yeah, I don't remember any of those dudes. I remember it was Forsyth
That name sounds familiar.
was one of them.
James? Arabic
maybe.
linguist? Yeah.
So, you know, just while we're on that point, so when he was starting it all up, they asked him, he told me the story years later, they were like, what are we going to call these teams here? So he was going to go with radio reconnaissance team, you know, but they wouldn't let him do that. So he's looking at these crew of guys that he has at the time, and, you know, if any of you guys end up listening to this, you know, at the you probably got way better, right? But he looks at the crew of guys he's got, and he's like, man, these guys are special. So that's where Special Collections team came from. SCT was the special crew that he was rolling with.
But yeah, he very sharp. And we had talked about the radios that we had at SOTG and how they had been modified after the fact, and he was the one that had the, I guess, I don't know if it was him or Joe Black. It may have been a little bit of both of them that had left us with all that gear that we used, and had nothing.
All the like hammer,
Yeah.
the amateur radios.
Yeah,
and
the
stuff.
amateur radios, the ICOMs and whatnot. You know, Goblin and Richardson and Six Killer were the ones that had taught me how to use all that stuff, and it was kind of like learning all over again how to be, you know, on a team with them. But Crawdaddy had made a big impression upon me, and I don't know what it was about me that he just, he liked me. And so years later, we were at Goodfellow, and I already had a target on my back amongst my peers. I don't know if I told you this or not. I had been written up and recognized for the Order of Merit in San Angelo, and they give this award out. The San Angelo Chamber of Commerce gives this award out once a year, and it's supposed to be a little bit of military accomplishment, achievement, but a lot of community service and community involvement. And I had been pretty much all in with regard to Cub Scouts, not just with my son's pack, but I was interacting with the district leadership in Amanji Trail, and which is the name of the district out there, and I'd show up at any of these scouting events with sometimes 25, 30, 40, 50 Marines. And so normally with Cub Scouts, the parents are kind of having to work and, have fun at the same time. But with all the Marines there, they would man the station. So you got Marines teaching.
These are students?
Yeah. And some of them were not instructors too. Some of them, like Nisley, which was teaching ham radios to some of the older Cub Scouts, and canoeing and land nav, and tracking, and all that stuff, and pretty cool because like they had set up a section where they had they were showing the footprints of what it looks like when a guy's walking, limping, jogging, running.
Yeah, with the different gait.
And then exactly, and then he falls down and gets up, crawls a little bit, and then gets back up and starts walking again. Cub Scouts, they just ate all that stuff up. So they give me this award, and of course the base newspaper has to do an article about it. So they interview the det commander. At the time was Major March, and he was misquoted as saying that I was the #1 staff sergeant in the battalion. Or in the detachment.
Here we go, right?
Right, and in such a public venue, and he was misquoted, and so he called, but the fact remains is that annual fitness reports had just come out. And indeed, at least through the reporting chain that I was in with the other instructors from our schoolhouse, I was #1. And so the fact that it was out there on the street in that public venue just made it even worse. So we walked all that back, and I was able to kind of keep the peace and downplay it a little bit. But I wasn't too much of an asshole, and we all got along there. It was a tight crew. And then Joe Black and Crawdaddy show up, and they're on a recruiting tour. And one of the other instructors asked point blank, what is it that you're looking for?
So Joe's the monitor at the time, and Crawdaddy's standing up MARSOC. Is that where we're at? Okay.
I think that's exactly what it was, or vice versa. They had just handed off Joe's at MARSOC. And
Crawdaddy's the monitor now. Yeah.
Right, and so they asked him, what are you looking? What kind of qualifications are you looking for to go to MARSOC? And I'm just sitting there, just listening to the spiel, and he puts his arm around me. He says, "We're looking for guys like this one right here."
The timing.
Yeah, but yeah, he was always good to me, and I never had a negative interaction with him. And I did, though. There was one peer that found himself on the wrong side of him when he was a monitor.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was.
Of Joe?
Of
Crawdaddy,
yeah.
Oh, Crawdaddy. Yeah.
And I don't know what it was, but and I talked to him because he was my neighbor, and I asked him. I said, "You want me to talk to him?" He's like, "Man, anything you can do. I'm really stressed out, and I can't make any headway with this guy." And so I brought it up to him, in a sidebar conversation, face to face, and said, "I just want to let you know. For what it's worth, he's a really good dude. And I don't know what." And he looked at me and said, "Sammy, it's the last we're going to talk about this. Bring it up again, and you're going to find yourself in the same boat as him." I left it alone after that. I said, "Hey, good to go."
Yeah.
But whatever it was, I who knows, right? But yeah, you don't want to be on his bad side.
Yeah.
And if you are, you got some work. You got some work to do.
Yeah, yeah. And it's crazy too because obviously Joe and Crawdaddy, as we talk about them both, are both men of the Lord, and when Joe would form an opinion, I've seen him completely come out of that also, because the man side of you, when somebody does you wrong or does something wrong community wise, you kind of you get that opinion and you're not going to see it change. But I've seen Joe be a deadline with a guy like that, and then over the I don't know whether it was his religion or whatever else that made him change what he thought about the guy, but eventually you would see that he would be like, okay, I'm not in the position, I shouldn't be judging this person, you know what I mean? And then it'd be back to a clean slate with him. I've seen, I don't want to name any of them, but there was even guys that, there's those crew of dudes every now and then in the Ock field that if you end up on the wrong side of them, you're gonna get, 4 or 5 people that are blindly loyal are gonna be of the same opinion of you. You
Right.
know what I mean? And I'm definitely cliquey with a few of my friends like that. It's no secret if you're on the wrong side of Billy Benedict, you're gonna be on the wrong side of me. You know what I mean? And you know how it goes, like things
Right.
like that, or if I don't like a guy, he's probably not going to do well with Guy Wainwright and things like that. Just stuff that goes by. But Joe kind of wouldn't go with that mold on things. And there was a guy in particular that we all had a major issue with. And to tell you the truth, it had nothing to do with me. I was an MOS instructor when it happened, but it had to do, Billy and Guy formed an opinion on somebody. And so me, blindly loyal, I'm like, hey, you guys don't like him? I don't like him either. Fuck that guy type of thing. And I think it was a few years later. I got back from the deployment that I did with Guy when we were with the ODA, and Joe was the boss over at MARSOC, and we were standing outside his door up there, and we're talking about something. And he's like, "Hey, come on in and shut the door real quick. We got to talk." So I'm like, "All right." So we go in there, and I don't remember if Guy was with me or not, but we sit down, and he's like, "Okay, person X, I know you guys don't like him, and I know if you, Guy, or Billy doesn't like him, that means all 3, and probably there's going to be more that doesn't like him. I
It's
think
like a block vote.
Yep. He's like he put in to come to the unit. I think he's a decent guy. We're going to give him a chance, but I'm going to send him to the West Coast. You cool with that?" Because we're all on the East Coast, And it's just kind of such a stupid, childish thing. And now I'm friends with him. Everybody kind of got over it. It was a stupid radio battalion fight before that. And it just 5, 6, 7 years later, he's trying to block a guy to get into a unit because of some stupid stuff that had nothing to, But so Joe took the opposite position on that one, and that's kind of how he rolled with things.
I find myself doing that sometimes, making snap judgments and or holding on to those grudges, and it was, and I'm not proud of it, as you can imagine, and so I try to force myself, to give, people the benefit of the doubt, but we're human,
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's easier to just fall into the groupthink, especially when you're really really tight with someone like the Billy Benedicts or the Guy Wainwrights, and you trust those guys implicitly. Mm-hmm. Hell, I do too, and I've never deployed with either of them, but I would take their word as gospel. And I remember I talked to Billy not too long ago when I was in San Antonio. I forgot what I called him about. I think it was one of my Marines had put it in a package to go over to MARSOC, and he was dealing with the
recruitment.
With the incoming bodies, and he told me on the phone that he was retiring, and man, it broke my heart.
Yeah. He got his retirement was a blast. It was like a small ceremony. Joe Farina was his retiring officer, but it was in a bar in D.C.
Okay.
It was a great time. Everybody came out before. People flying in from all over the country, and it was like 3 days of just autopilot, just trying to stay awake, type of thing.
Right.
And we went to Top Golf that morning, and everybody's getting after it, drinking their asses off, and it's probably like noon. We're all hurting. So I was kidding around with him, and I was like, "Hey man, I'm ducking your retirement. I'm not going to it." And he's like, "Don't duck my retirement." And I'm like, "I'm ducking it, dude." And then there was a bunch of DDs. They all jumped in the car, and it was from, I think it was Arlington was the top golf we're in, and they were driving up to around DuPont Circle in D.C. was where the bar was that Billy was retiring in. And I was with a buddy that in the area that I was working at in MARSOC at this point. I was with a buddy from there, and we're like, hey, let's leave your car here. He was shit-faced too, you know. And if there's one thing we don't do, it's drink and drive. So we're like, let's get on the metro, and we're gonna metro this thing up there. Yeah, so we get on the metro, and we're going north because we're at like, I think it was the Blue Line or something, and it's like the furthest south stop, Springfield or somewhere where we're at, and we got to get way up into DC on this thing. We go the first like underground section of it, and the train stops. And they're like, and so we have no cell service. We're in this tunnel, right?
Right.
And they're like, hey, it's going to be like a few hours. You're just going to have to sit here. So I'm like, fuck, I've been joking all day about ducking his retirement. And I can't write him. I can't. So it got fixed quicker than it should have. It was about 45 minutes, but this thing starts going. And as soon as we get cell service, I get probably 100 text messages. Bah! My phone's going nuts. And it's like, he's one of your best friends, you dick. I can't believe you ducked his retirement and all this stuff. Yeah. So finally people start calling me, and they're like, where are you at? And I was like, I didn't duck it. We were stuck in it. And he's like, Billy's pissed. So they actually held the retirement. I only ended up being about 10 minutes late, but they held it. But yeah, it was right. He actually thought I was ducking his retirement, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there was that much bad blood between you. So I kind of want to shift gears, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, and talk to you about balance. Mm-hmm. And you know, I know that the time at MARSOC was even more strenuous than your time at Radio Battalion. But what have you done in order to maintain that I guess equilibrium between, you know, like personal and professional lives, and then, you know, if it's applicable, that inner search for quiet,
yeah,
peace.
You know those charts. There's an official name for them where it's got the you know, however many circles that represent different things, and then they overlap at some part where they're, you know, all together or whatever. In my head, I have 3 circles, right? And one is productive. The other's consumption. And then there's an area that's productive consumption. And it's the way I've always rolled with it, but I wasn't able to put it into kind of a, you know, be able to say what it was that I do. But it was actually on the land nav course just recently. I was waiting for one of these lost idiots to show up, and I was just thinking about it, and it kind of popped in. So all of them have to be balanced equally, right? So let's say production. Production is where you're working, you're studying stuff to do. Well, not studying, because that would be productive consumption. So you're just doing things that are all the job. You're learning, you're going after it, you're getting it done. Well, consumption is where you do things that are completely not related to the job. You watch a brainless show. You know what I mean? So if you watch too many brainless shows, your production just goes to shit, right? And it's non-existent. But in the same sense, if you're, you know, building antennas and ham radio this, ham radio that, studying this, studying that, eventually you just start to go off the rails, and your egg carton's filling up a little bit too much on it. And then the kind of middle ground, like if you're doing too much production, or if I am, it's just the way I see it. I don't know if production's the right word for it, but if you're too into it, and you need to kind of let off the throttle a little bit, you can feel it coming, you know. I do productive consumption. That's where, like, you know, my reading or my leisure will be something loosely based to the job a little bit. And, you know, I just kind of try to keep all 3 of those balanced, and it keeps me going, not focusing too much on one thing. And then there's always the, you know, just mindless thing that you got to do every now and then, or, you know, physical exercise and stuff. The balance is definitely important as long as it's all oriented towards something. You know what I mean? It's probably obvious with what I'm saying here that mine's oriented towards the job. You know, it's I think it's just kind of the time frame that we came up in the Marine Corps. You know, shortly after everything started, it was always you have to be good, and you can't mess it up, because, you know, I don't want to throw the cliche lives depend on it, you know what I mean? But it you know, some of the times it did. If you missed something, or if you got it, it changed things completely. So being a young guy and having to learn with that much pressure on it never left.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like even the three things that I balance is kind of focused on that. They, and then kind of going on with it, when I went to MARSOC, I was surrounded with all people that thought that way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's kind of the company that you keep thing, and you know everybody gets better by being around each other, and you know it's kind of, I don't want to say it's competitive. It's almost like a
Infectious.
infectious, yeah.
Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres.
Oh, what's this?
If you tell me who you walk with, I'll tell you who you are.
Oh, that's deep. I like it.
Yeah.
That's a tattoo.
So actually, that was it was something I hung up on my hatch when I was in the embassy in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
There's some Marines on patrol. I wrote it in Spanish. And just one of those things. Kind of, even though I'm in there in suit and tie, but I still got a pull-up bar.
Yeah.
You know, right there in my office, and you know, bottles of scotch were present from time to time, but it's one of those things that kept me focused on the fact that I may not be in uniform right now, but I'm still a Marine, still got to stay on the job, and I will be back in the fight at some point in time, and lo and behold, here I am at 3MEF.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me who you walk with, I'll tell you who you are.
That's good.
But that I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
And you know, for me, I used to envy that about the RFP community, in that there was that level of camaraderie and brotherhood that was above and beyond the normal Marine Corps ethos and I guess esprit de corps. But the thing that surprised me was that it extended out to the MARSOC community, because of a lot of the guys were the same guys. But you know, when I asked about the balance, you know, you said production, productive consumption, and consumption.
Mm-hmm.
But where does making time to sit down and eat dinner at the table with you and Loretta and Rocco fall into that?
I would have that as productive consumption. Now, even though it's not job related, it's the thing that, you know, it's kind of in every brief everywhere, right? If the family life isn't good, the operational life isn't good, type of thing. So, yeah, that's.
Was that what home life was like growing up for young Sonny?
What's that? The sitting that? No, I had two older brothers, and it was kind of my next older brother's 2 years older than me. And then our oldest brother was 9 years older than me, so it was kind of just a huge age gap there. And we were the house that all the family members were always over, the aunts and the cousins and the neighbors, and you know there was always something going on in the house. So it was kind of always hectic.
And
you know,
what was your hometown?
Clifton, New Jersey.
I didn't know you were from Jersey.
Yeah, well, I was there till freshman year of high school, and then we moved to a suburb of Cleveland. So that's actually where I ended up joining out of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Browns fan?
No, I actually, yeah. I don't have a football team. I think fantasy football kind of ruined one team allegiance. You know what I mean? Because you watch them all to get it done. I'm a football fan in general, but
you are or you're not?
I am, but I like watching them all. You know, if my team was gonna be the team that I've seen the most in person, it would probably be the Jets.
Okay.
Because Giant Stadium right there.
I really kind of stopped watching football pretty much after joining the Marine Corps. You know, growing up in Texas, football's king. And
What's it, Saturday Night Lights or
Friday Night Lights.
Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, that's when the high school teams play. And you know, wasn't a big guy, but I suited up at least through junior high. I played my sophomore year. My parents had divorced, and I was at a smaller school and played out there, but JV. But it just, I don't know. After, I guess at a certain age, I no longer looked up to football players.
Yeah.
Started looking at different individuals as role models, but I guess my single greatest football memory was my father taking me to the Astrodome to go watch the Oilers play against the 49ers. And I was a huge 49ers fan because I hated Cowboy fans. But the Oilers never beat the Cowboys, so I had to export my fan loyalty to the team that hosted my favorite player, which was Jerry Rice.
Remind me of my Texas story when you
Okay.
get that.
So Jerry Rice, number 80. That's the number that I wore in junior high, and the same number that I wore in high school. It was him, Joe Montana, Tom Rathman, Roger Craig, John Taylor, Charles Haley. The list goes on. I mean, legends, right? Hall of Famers, pretty much all. Ronnie Lott. I played safety too, so and safety and corner, depending on what year you're talking about. But I got to see Joe Montana throw a touchdown to Jerry Rice, like almost right in front of me. We had seats in the end zone. It's one of those memories I'll never ever forget. In the Astrodome of all places, right? Which is now just it's like a shed out the back of the Texas Stadium, or the new, I guess it's the Reliance Stadium now is what they're calling it. But what's your Texas story?
So, you're not one of these guys, but you know those guys that everything's awesome in Texas, right? So when you're talking to them, they're just like, yeah, fucking, well, in Texas great dude. Yeah, I checked in the radio battalion with him. I did a MEU with him. You know Ryan Miller?
I don't know more.
He was he eventually came to MARSOC too with us, and he did a couple deployments out of there. Ended up getting injured and medically retiring or whatever. Phenomenal dude, but he was a Texas guy, right? Same thing. I think he has 2 or 3 tattoos that are either the outline of Texas or say Texas, right? So we're in it was the MEU that, like I brought up before, where you were the SOTG guy for when we rolled out, and I think he was the OCAC team leader or some shit. And we're sitting in Iraq, and it was in between one of my team's missions, and we're all just sitting outside bullshitting, and he's going on and on and on about Texas. And I'm at the end of it, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm like, you know what? Fuck Texas. And he's looking at me like, what? And I was like, I'm going the rest of my life. I'm never going to step foot in the state of Texas. And he's like, bullshit, you can't avoid it. It's like a magnet will pull you there. And I was like, fuck Texas. To this day, I have not stepped foot in Texas. I've rerouted flights. If I was going to stop in Dallas. Yeah, but my brother-in-law lives in Texas now, and he's telling me about how cool it is. He was just here. And I was like, damn it, I think I'm going to break, man. I think I'm going to crack, So now I'm like, where you start to make little deals with yourself, and you give yourself a little bit of slack on it. So now I'm like, I was talking to Loretta about it the other day, and I was like, maybe just my Marine Corps career. Maybe I won't go to Texas my whole Marine Corps career,
There's a lot to do there. It's varied. So, I mean, I grew up in Galveston. It's an island about a quarter the size of Okinawa. Sandbar, shit beaches. Beaches are always brown. Every so often they'll be blue or green, but nothing like here in Hawaii, right? or there in Oki, or the Dominican Republic, So, but I grew up fishing and crabbing, and I could throw a cast net, come up with some bait, turn that into speckled trout or red snapper, or, Used to have a lot of fun out there on the water. Houston is enormous, and Dallas is its own entity. Dallas-Fort Worth, that metropolitan area. I lived in Dallas for a little bit. Didn't like it too much. Just wasn't my flavor. San Antonio fits me. There's a lot of good opportunities for us there, as you're aware, and you can get decent real estate at a decent price. A lot of foreign nationals starting to come in there, though.
Oh,
straight
shit.
from Mexico. So you'll see a lot of that, and then of course El Paso. For me, I want nothing to do with El Paso.
Yeah.
I couldn't live there. It's just too close to the border. There's not much else going on. I'm sure it's fine for some people, but West Texas, living in San Angelo for 4 years was okay. I could stomach it. I don't know if I could retire there. I'd like to be able to do something a little bit more, I don't know, I guess highbrow than just do the county fair and rodeo thing.
You know what I just thought of as you were talking about there? I think my streak's going to go to an end. I think the TNR conference is there this year, isn't it?
I think
I'm
you're right.
pretty sure I'm on. Damn it.
Yeah. Yep.
Are you going to that?
I'd like to, but, our policy has been, and I just went over this with Master Guns right before coming out here, like, when we have these huge gatherings, if it's an OAG or, a working group or whatnot, a lot of times, we just don't have the funds at the MEF to support my travel, because CG's mantra has been, give the money to the MSCs, we'll take what's left over.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a lot more sense for you to be there than me.
Yeah.
I might have input, but you're going to apply it. So, I see the logic in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at the point now where I've got to be looking up as opposed to down. And if I'm looking down and I'm not looking up, then
Yeah.
I'm missing it, and that's going to have a negative impact on you guys. So one of the things that I've identified that I need to start doing better is ensuring that I'm in sync with you all before you go out to do those things. And then I'm ready in, when you guys get back as to what changes are coming down the pipe. It's very easy in Okinawa to feel like you're alone and afraid.
Yeah. Terrified.
Right? And I was kind of, thinking about it the other day, like I really only have 3 half days, with Rabin.
Yeah.
Because my Monday is your Sunday, and my Saturday is your Friday, and so then because of the time difference, like you guys are in the latter part of your day is the first half of mine, so it makes it difficult, and you have to I'm having to become adept at asynchronous communication.
Yeah.
And it can be burdensome. Sometimes I'll shift my schedule and come in early and then try to leave early, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. So rocking a 12, 14-hour day without meaning to. But that's the job, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that kind of got me out of that, I had taken on PT in the little tribe of Lance Corporals that I have up there at the 2, and in the mornings I just get them up. We do 100 kettlebell swings, 10 Turkish get-ups, and we do like an hour of sparring and jiu-jitsu.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So I heard you guys are supposed to get some mats soon?
RP has a mat that we have in the boat locker there. You use it, yeah, but they were talking today about trying to get some more mats and getting them set up to get more people in the company doing it and whatnot for the exercise.
Just doing boots and utes? Or
We've done all different types at RP. Obviously now with the it's just with downsizing and everything else, all this quality of marine craft and the tier system, like the McMat belts are actually mattering, not that they, I don't want to, but like to retain people, it's ridiculous, so it's,
right.
We're focusing on all this operational training that's going to make them the best they could be at the job, but then you can't forget about the,
just the basic
players got to go to the pool. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what when you were talking about PTing with the younger guys, it kind of reminded me of I was gone down there in North Carolina at MARSOC for so long. You're kind of, I don't want to say on your own program, but you're just expected to stay fit. There's nobody saying you have to do this, and everybody down there is really fit. We do, and MDIAC has different physical events built into it and whatnot. And then your everyday team life on the MSOTs, you gotta keep up. You gotta almost show up. You know what I mean? Show some of them up, so you can't be that thing. But it's very different than being in reconnaissance shape, because it's a very different animal. So
Different how? Explain that.
it's kind of on the teams out there. Strength is a big thing. Kind of just mental grit, being able to walk forever with your kid on, go. Some sense of that. But the reconnaissance shape is like, especially here, you got these kids that are like 19. They're running sub-18s. They're swimming like nobody's business. You know what I mean? Blowing through the O course. They do a good bit of rucking too, but not as much as the like running around with kid on and all that shit that we did over there, carrying heavy things and kind of forceful, explosive stuff. So when I got out here, I was at all these young, and then RP's all the young studs. So let alone the fact that they're 19, they're on top of their game,
Right.
And I kind of rolled in and I was observing them for a while, and I'm like, dude, these guys are out of control and shape. You know, hopefully I was like that when I was a younger guy. I bet I was, you know. And right after I got here, I went back to the East Coast for 3 weeks. I was working with Crawdaddy. I was actually teaching with Billy on the East Coast, and at the time, my mom ended up passing away up in Ohio, so it kind of made sense that I was there in North Carolina, and I was able to go up and do all the stuff, take care of everything and whatnot. But so when I first show up down there for the training, and I'd only been here, I checked in January. This is March. I'm down there. And, you know, I'm running around with these RP kids trying to keep it real, you know. I don't want them to think I'm some punk, you know.
Right.
And I said kids, these RP men. And and I see Billy, and we see another person that we didn't work with at MARSOC, but it was in the same community, soft type community. And they're like, damn, Sonny, you lost a lot of weight. And it was kind of like trying to be like an insult, like you don't have any muscle on you or whatever. And Billy just completely came in my defense, and he's like, man, he's out there running and swimming with these 19-year-old players, man. That's all those guys do is run and swim. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, reconnaissance shape is definitely different. One of the things that we started, you know, doing out here, you know, the RPAT thing that they run or whatever, the sequence of it. So it's a reconnaissance, was it physical assessment test or whatever?
Okay.
And big list of events that you got to do. And it's actually a yearly requirement for the reconnaissance community. And it's in the 26-23 TNR manual that you'll do it every year.
Okay.
And up until now, it's been like a kind of like a rite of passage thing or whatever with the platoons. And I was, you know, doing that exercise with one of the guys from here. And he brings it up. He's like, yeah, because he did a year over with Third Force with the way they're employing them out here. And he's like, yeah, when I ran my RPAT with Third Force. And I was like, what do you mean you ran your RPAT with them? And he's like, yeah, they don't mess around, man. We do this every year. Like the force companies and the recon battalions do it every year. So I'm like, oh, shit, man. He's like, yeah, you know, I've been saying it for a while. We should do it every year. And I'm like, you know what? We should fucking do it every year. So I look at the TNR manual, and I'm like, wow, he's not kidding around. So you know me, I get in McTims, and I make it an annual requirement for all the R. And so you're gonna pop on an RPAT hit list, basically, you know. And I was talking with one of the other guys in the platoon like a couple days later, and I was like, yeah, everybody's running the RPAT. I'm going to run mine in June. And they're like, you're going to run yours? And I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm one of you. Fuck yeah, I'm running mine, you know? So now it's RPAT season for us, so we're all getting ready for the events, you know. And it's.
What happens if they fail?
I haven't decided yet. I was thinking...
Doctrinally, what would happen if they failed?
So it's not... It has it on there that it's just, you know... kind of a requirement, but there's no, you know...
There's no repercussions tied to it.
No, so I talked to a few people in the recon community over at 2nd, 3rd, and 1st, and then at RTC, the training house. And what I kind of got that the rest of them do is you get put on a remedial program within your own community. You know, it's basically, hey, man, and most of the time... guys don't even have to be on it for long because these are all the type A people in those communities anyway. So when you don't make your RPAT, you're gonna fix that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. That's where. So
nobody wants that stigma on.
Yeah.
On them. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually the guy that brought this all up, I want to leave his name out because he's moving on to bigger, not bigger, but other things. But I was talking to him about it, and when he was out there, and there was a dude that was like a walker, you know, with the other patrols, and he's like, oh, that fucking guy, he didn't pass his RPAT. And I was like, oh, that's what it's about, right? Yeah.
What's a walker?
An evaluator, kind of.
Okay.
When a team's going in to do a patrol, it's the guy that, you know, stands behind them. So, like, who's the tactical genius because he's disconnected from the scenario, you know?
Armchair quarterback.
Yeah. The one thing I always hate about walkers is, and you know, I know it's coming every time, and it still pisses me off, is they always hit you on security. Security could have been better. It's undefendable. Security could always be better, you know?
Right.
You're like, you jerk. Yeah. Yeah, so that's it's kind of where we're going with it now. Every year, everybody, regardless of who you are, is going to do this event, and that's where the no slack came from, written above our door, you know, that we put up there just to remind you that everybody's on the same playing field, whether you're there.
Do you have all your Marines listening to the Jocko?
I've been pitching it a lot. Yeah, it's starting to catch on with a lot of them. Yeah.
So just, if anything, they can catch on to the inside jokes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we started, they became platoon inside jokes because I would say them with people, and I'd always explain where I got it from or whatnot, but now people are starting to listen to them, and it's cracking up. Like, whenever we were talking about this me and you were in my office the other day about whenever we're telling stories and we say back in the day, you gotta say, like, back in the day.
Yeah, I do that, but I don't think anybody in my shop listens to Jocko Willing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only reason they train jujitsu is because I made them. You know, because sometimes it's hard for me to get Oki traffic is rough, and sometimes it's hard for me to get out to Hanson or the other spots that we host the training at, and so if I can get it in the morning, even with the youngsters, I've got it in.
Yeah.
But the problem that I found was that when you're the strongest guy on the mat, you can make mistakes and you don't get caught. And then when you finally do get into the Shark Tank, and you continue making those
Deep
mistakes,
waters.
yeah. Because I'm a solid 4-stripe white belt.
Yeah.
But you start going with some of those upper level blues and they and higher, you make those same mistakes you're making with the youngsters that haven't been training as long as I have, then they'll capitalize.
Yeah.
But that was the intent behind it, though, was for them to start to become comfortable in uncomfortable positions.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed a change in demeanor in every single one of them, such that
Like a confidence change?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and then just like a camaraderie change, right? Because they've already figured out who could take who,
Yeah.
or at least in that environment,
Mm-hmm.
and they've tested each other, and there's a couple of times I had to separate a few of them because their tempers were starting to flare, and it was getting a little personal.
Good.
Yeah, good, exactly. But the thing was, Master Guns was like, hey, don't I don't want anybody getting broken. Of course, the first time I bring my OIC out to roll, he dislocates one of the Marines' shoulders. I was like, oh, sir, what are you doing? Just okay, you go to medical. I had to issue a mea culpa to Master Guns when we got back, but for the most part, like I said, I've seen a huge shift in a boost in confidence level amongst all of them, and a level of cohesion that they didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
And they it was funny because we had a mess night recently, and we've got a deputy G2 that is as sharp as they come, solid lieutenant colonel. I admire and respect the hell out of this guy, and he took some heat from the ops section during mess night. And,
Yeah.
stands up. One of the majors, I think, was the initiating.
Is
party.
this Lieutenant Colonel the guy that you were telling me that was asking the lieutenant the questions or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it was one of the majors gets up and he charges the deputy G2 with being long-winded, and so they go back and forth, and the deputy's defending himself very well. He's smooth. Spent some time as a humaner, if I'm not mistaken, and so he can spar with the best of them verbally, and then the whole ops section ends up having to go take a swig of the grog for bringing up false charges.
Yeah.
Very next instant, one of my corporals stands up and he levies a fine against the same deputy G2 who he happened to be sitting right next to. And this is one of my 2651s, glasses, always coming, having to get pushed back up on his nose and just, Geek Squad,
Yeah.
cyber ninjas, and he flawlessly delivers in front of the entire mess, and charges him with fraternization because the lieutenant colonel had invited him to his house for Thanksgiving, just to, because we were getting everybody to go eat someplace. And but the kicker was this young Marine has a penchant for making bad puns, and the deputy's last name is Hurt, and so the kicker was he says it pains me to bring this to everyone's attention. One would even say it hurts. So the deputy stands up and he goes, guilty as charged. He takes his grog and runs with it. But everybody was like thoroughly impressed. Like, where's this? Because it wasn't just that one corporal. It was my whole crew, and where'd this confidence come from? Because I've been rolling up in the ball in the mornings, and just stressing them out. But they're starting to see that they can survive that, and they push through it, and it's more challenging for them than pretty much any of the other things that they've done so far in the Marine Corps, which is kind of disheartening for me because there were some things that we've been exposed to maybe around that time that I think probably would be tough for some of these younger guys to stomach. Not that they couldn't handle it, but they'd have a rough time with it at least initially.
Yeah, it's a weird time right now, and I see it with the first-term guys that are here that are great dudes. They're frustrated because we're in the bottom of it now. We're in the bottom of the wave, so all the guys that they look up to are guys that have a ton of combat experience, and then you got guys that come in out here in the younger generation first-termers that are here, and they want to do that so bad. They want to get out and get to prove themselves, do something real world, and it hasn't worked out the last couple of years, And then you see them get frustrated, and they want to get out and go do stuff, and you don't want to skew them, right? If a guy wants to make that decision, that's a decision, but in the back of your head, you're kind of like, hold on. It'll happen, buddy. Hold on.
Just give it time. Just give it time. Yeah.
There was a guy here, we were talking about him the other day when we were at lunch. His solid kid. Actually, no, it was at the staff club. Nick was talking about him. That real solid guy that ended up getting out. He's like, I'm going to try college. And we all tried to talk him into staying in. And,
right.
He was over at my house one time. I had the whole platoon over, and he just got back from float, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't get the opportunity to go to BRC like these other guys, and I'd want to go to MARSOC, and that's not going to happen." And Loretta was laughing because I called him out. I was like, "I'll put you in McTim's right now. I'll put you to BRC. There's a class starting in 2 weeks. You go there. We'll call Billy. He'll get into MARSOC after that." And now it's on his plate. He's like, "Oh,
Yeah."
But he's a tough kid. He'd do fine with it. So he ends up getting out, and I still talk to him all the time. We're FaceTiming him when we're out in Guam doing the exercise. And went to college, and he's been there for like 6 months or whatever, and now he's trying to get back in.
He
and
fucking hates it.
The boat space thing, he can't get. And this is a solid guy.
Yeah.
I know he'll come back in, and we'll probably get him over to MARSOC, and he'll do a good thing. But it's kind of.
I had a guy like that in San Antonio, but the thing with him was he wanted to retain, but we only had, I think, maybe 2 or 3 boat spaces that year, and I mean, eminently qualified. We just couldn't keep him. We had to let him go, and the following year we had dudes that were nowhere even close to this other guy, but we had plenty of boat spaces because we had gotten rid of too many the year prior. So we were actually able to bring him into the reserves, and then I was able to activate him. Make the justification to get him activated, but I had to do it appropriately because it could look like I was putting undue influence on the process. But so we were careful about how we handled that. But end result was the Marine's back in uniform and he's back at work.
Oh, good.
But he's in the reserves right now.
Yeah.
But long story short, he's doing Chesty's work, wearing Marpet. Good on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been there's been a few times where I've contemplated getting out, but And one time in particular, I was actually gonna go to the Army, but, you know, the wife, at every opportunity, the wife was like, yeah, but then you'd have to wear the uniform.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you love being a Marine. And she's right. You know, but to a certain extent, though, for some of these guys, that's just not enough.
Mm-hmm.
They're already a Marine. No one can take that away from them. But I think one of the things that's kept me in for so long, you know, now I'm coming up on, what, almost 19?
Oh, shit. Right there.
Yeah, is the fact that I feel a sense of obligation to the guys that went before us, the ones that took a vested interest in my personal professional development. You know, guys like Gecko.
Yeah.
And that dude, you know, it amazes me. It amazed me. So there I am in the DIAC, right? Bolin Air Force Base, suit and tie, doing the thing. And I walk up to get a cup of coffee, and he's there in line right in front of me. I'm like, holy shit. He's like, you got to be a gunny by now, right? And I said, I am, Master Guns. Call me David. And I said, can I call you Gecko?
Please.
He said, you call me whatever you want. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
And he tells me, and this blew my mind, Sonny. He says, I tell stories about you all the time. I'm like, me? Yeah, of what one sergeant can do. And, you know, and I guess I don't, at that time, it was hard for me to understand that a young sergeant could make that much of an impact on a Master Guns.
Yeah.
And I see it now.
Yeah, so I was going to say, now you're looking at it.
I see it now. You know, I mean, the level of growth that I've undergone between, you know, junior gunny at the time. I had just been promoted when I met up with him again, to now as a somewhat junior master sergeant, is tremendous. And so I can see his point. But you know, him and guys like Joe Keenan and others, like some of those grizzled old master sergeants, master guns that were out there at second with us, that kept me sharp, kept me focused, and looked out for me. And there was a point in time where I was at SOTG, and Liz had just had a miscarriage, and I was expected to. I was hoping that we would have time to kind of recover from that while we were still out there. And you know, Doug Gaden was our one of the gunnies out there at the time, and you know, I saw a different side of him than I'd seen previous when that happened, and I'd shared the news. And then I started getting messages, the company clerks calling me up saying, "Hey, you need to check in over here at Bravo Company. We're getting ready to go forward." And I'm like, I just can't deal with this right now, and because it was just mixed signals. I thought I was supposed to be here for a period of time, and I asked the gunnies, like, you know, do you know anything about what's going on? Who can I talk to? And he's like, okay. And then he goes, makes a phone call, and he says, Master Guns wants to talk to you. And he tells me, he says, listen, stud, you're staying where you're at. Take your breather. You know. You'll be fine. And, you know, it's those little small moments in which, you know, a leader took the time out of their day to reach out to me and talk to me man to man, like I was a human being, as opposed to just going to the default answer. Hey, you know what? He's got to deploy. You know, hey, sorry, but these guys weren't like that. And who would I be if I wasn't the same way? And so, you know, I try to apply that approach, but sometimes it bites you in the ass.
Yeah.
You know, and it can make things more difficult than they have to be sometimes when you can go too far.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, kind of going back to finding that balance and knowing when to bend a little and when to be firm with them, and it's gotten to the point that I've told the story about the Russian parable about the little bird. You heard that one?
No.
Little bird, middle of winter, falls out of the tree, hurts its wing, can't move, and it's starting to freeze, and he's chirping, and this cow comes along, just drops a deuce right on top of him. He's like, oh man, but now he's warm. He can move his wings again. He's feeling all right, and probably pops his head out. He's chirping because he's happy as can be. He's gonna make it. And up comes this fox. Pulls him out of the shit. Eats the motherfucker. And the moral of the story is not everybody who shits on you is trying to hurt you. Not everybody who takes you out of shit is trying to help you.
Yeah.
I can't think of who told me that first, but I've heard it several times from several different leaders, and I've used it recently more than I probably would like to, just because of the fact that you got to be fair with these guys, but you also got to be firm with them, because who knows what's next.
Yeah.
And they could find themselves in similar situations than we were in, albeit the other side of the earth.
And sometimes when somebody's trying to help you, it's the situation that you're in, you may not see it as help at the time. Like recent thing that happened to me, and I actually got to talk to Willie about it when he came out here to visit, and we're in the car. He thought I was going to be mad at him for sending me out here, right? And I was at the old unit for a long time, did a shit ton of deployments out there, and was just in the game, and a lot of people that stayed there for a while started to fall personally, started to professionally, on top of their game, and wouldn't let any of that fall, but their personal life was falling apart. And I'll admit I was there, but I didn't want to leave the operational tempo I was in. I didn't want to leave the boys. I wanted to still show that I was on top of my game. And I remember this. I was out at lunch, and it was like I was telling you before we started this. Yeah, you're talking about when did I come out here or whatever. Did I choose to come out? And I was supposed to stay in MARSOC and go to the West Coast.
Oh.
And then Loretta was going to go to 1st Radio Battalion. And so I'm all set on this. We're looking and we're talking to everybody that's out there. Dan Adams, I was working with him at the time, but he came from the West Coast. And, we're looking at houses in Temecula and all this shit. And then Willie calls me up, and he's like, hey, bro, I need you to go to 3rd Radio Recon. Nick started, Nick pushed the program into the next level, and he's moving on up into the S3. I need you to go over there. And I was like, immediately pushing back, I'm sure there's somebody else. I'm disconnected from the radio recon community. And he wasn't telling me at the time that he was saving me. What he kind of made it seem like was, well, I need you. And for anybody that's listening, a lot of people recently have been saying things like, the monitor is always coming from the same community now, and he's protecting you guys and this and that.
You're stealing my thunder. I was going to bring that up later.
Yeah, so I want to point out the worst place that you could be is in a good operational grace with the monitor, because when he needs somebody to go somewhere, he's going to go with the guys that he knows. You know what I mean? And those places aren't always good. But for this case, it was a good place that he was sending me, but I didn't see it that way at the time. So I come out here kicking and screaming, and then I get out here, and the program that Nick built is just way beyond what I thought it was going to be. And great guys around reminded me of when I started out in RRP, and I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Got out to the field with them, was just having a blast getting connected. Then my family life got a lot better. My personal life got better. Started focusing, more where I should have, and wasn't off the tracks like I was personally anymore at the end of my time there at MARSOC. And so Willie comes out here, and we're going around having dinner one night, hanging out, and we're driving in his car, and he's like, bro, I thought you were going to be mad at me for sending you out here. I've been kind of like waiting for this conversation. And he goes, I'm not going to apologize to you about it, but I saw you falling off the tracks. You were too close to it. You didn't see it. And what we got to do to each other as homies is you got to have one guy that's disconnected and outside, and then could pull you guys away and let you see it. And I told him, I was like, I'm so happy that you sent me here. I wouldn't have told you that that wasn't my perspective when I was coming here.
Right.
But once I got here and got around the guys, I'm really happy, and my family life is great, around great dudes, and I want to thank you for sending me out here. And he's like, oh, dude, I'm so happy to hear that. I was worried about that one, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of goes with what you were saying before about protecting people. You're not shielding them. You know what I mean? And as long as you can recognize that. And, you know, my day, I always joke around with Loretta, and she gets all pissed when I say it, but I got one more good war left in me. you know what I mean? I know it's still out there in my days.
It's like that Charlie Murphy bit where the old man in Netflix and some young guy cuts in front of him. He throws down his cane and becomes a young man once again. I got one left, bitch.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
So what were you going to say about the monitor thing that where I stole your thunder?
Yes. So it is a point of contention that and I don't necessarily harbor it. I recognize it as a trend. I don't think it's a necessity. But I'm not bitching about it either, because I definitely am not fighting to become a monitor. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody in their right mind wants that job. I think the guy, it's kind of like the president, the guy that wants that job, he's kind of suspect. Right?
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
You know, if I'm being honest, you know,
You got to question his intentions. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, the level of stress associated with making all those decisions with regard to family readiness, professional development, you know, who gets groomed for those increasing levels of responsibility, and who just gets dropped in you know, some closet somewhere, mm-hmm. and never to be seen again, because that happens too.
Yeah.
You know?
And then you see some of these dudes at like OAGs or something, and they're like a senior master guns, and you're like, who the fuck is that guy? Never even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, because they've been able to maintain a certain amount of competitiveness, at least from the perspective of a selection board, but when they get to where they need to be, and they're not as well versed as they probably could have been. But I think from Willie Pete to Joe Denton to Zach Reeves to Crawdaddy, Joe Black. Who was before Joe Black?
Was it Russman?
I think so. And I don't, you know, that was so early in my time, because I picked up staff sergeant right around the time Black was a monitor, so I didn't have any interaction with him. Was he RP?
Joe Black or Russman?
Russman.
No, Russman wasn't. Joe was the first RP guy. I don't know if he was the first ever RP guy to hold a monitor, but he was the beginning to where it was a RP guy or a MARSOC guy after that. And he told me that story one day. He was all set to go to 1st Radio Battalion. He was working up in Fort Meade doing the, you know, special missions type shit. And he was all set. And I think I may be messing this story up, but I think when he found out he was actually in Afghanistan. And they were like, hey, you're going to go be the monitor. And he's the same thing, kicking and screaming, oh, no, I want to go to 1st Radio, blah, blah, blah. I got all these plans.
Let me switch gears for a second. What are you reading? I know what you're reading, but for those listening, what are you reading?
Right now I'm reading a book. It's called About Face by Colonel David Hackworth. And I'll tell you, it's a monster. It's
You said 800 fucking pages?
800 and something pages. And just a little bit of background. Well, I first heard about the book on Jocko Willick's podcast, and he always refers back to it. So I was like, it was probably like, I heard him cover it. It was one of his earlier podcasts. And then eventually he kept talking about it so much, and I liked the shit that was in it, that the stuff that Jocko would cover, that I was like, I'm just going to check this out for myself.
Yeah.
You know? And don't want to ruin it for anybody, but I'll just give a highlight of it. He's a enlisted man in Korea. Was there from the beginning all the way through. Ended up getting a battlefield commission. Went through the peacetime army in between that, and then stayed on all through the beginning of Vietnam up to become the youngest full bird colonel. He's got like 10 silver stars. Is just out of control with his awards. Right. But it's almost like you could just understand what he's saying, because he's so like the person, you know what I mean? It's not one of those books that you read to where the guy's high and mighty. And there's so many lessons in there, but there's 850 something pages worth of them, you know what I mean? So you reach back on them. One of the things in it that I made a reference to earlier, we were laughing about it, and then you brought up the Jocko podcast, is he had this knack for turning around shitbag units. That's probably a terrible way to say it, but just unmotivated dudes and like getting them to get fired up and become like he kind of puts it in a way of, and I can see it in the military nowadays to where it's kind of frowned upon to be hardcore. You know, and I was saying it to my guys the other day. There's nothing wrong with being hardcore. You know what I mean? It's kind of frowned upon. I think it's who was it? Somebody I was talking to referred to it as the terminal Lance generation. You know what I mean? Like if you're a hardcore guy. Now that doesn't mean being the yut guy. You know what I mean? Being passionate and that being hardcore is okay. You're afraid that you're gonna end up in a fucking comic book somewhere. Right. You know? But one of the things that Hackworth did that I liked, and that's where that no slack thing came from, was he wanted to turn around this unmotivated unit that he had in Vietnam. They were all draftees. They were all fucked up with what they were doing, and they didn't have a good purpose. And he wanted to like draw that unit pride out of them. So first thing he switched was what their ritual for saluting. When an enlisted man saw an officer, he saluted and said, "I'm a hardcore fucking recondo." And the officer will return the salute and say, "No fucking slack." Yeah, but that's just a little glimpse of what's in the book. You know, it's pretty decent. He has a few more. I haven't got to them yet. I don't know if they're any good or, you know.
So, in line with that, I'm reading Blood Meridian right now.
No, what is that? I never heard.
So it's written by Cormac McCarthy.
Okay.
He's
write that down in my notes.
It's one of Jocko's must-reads. But I first picked up Cormac McCarthy when I was on float in 2008, and my wife said, "I'm going to send you a book. Don't throw it away when you see the cover." I said, "Well, what's on the cover?" She said, "It says Oprah's Book Club." My baby knows me. So the book comes in, it's The Road, and it effectively tells a story of one man's journey with his son in the most dire of circumstances, and how they managed to maintain the fire. And it's definitely informed my approach to fatherhood and parenting and preparing my boys to become men. And, you know, in light of losing my father somewhat early, not too long ago, it seems like yesterday, but it's been a few years, to get them to understand that I won't be here forever. And they've got to be prepared to make those hard decisions, and as cruel as this world can be up to it. And The Road definitely gets into all of that.
Really?
So Blood Meridian is kind of along those same lines, but it tells the story of a young man who finds himself amongst a group of Indian scalp traders.
What?
Yeah. It's a very depraved glimpse of the human condition.
Are they fiction?
It's based in reality.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But back in that time, it didn't matter if you, I mean, by the time it's all said and done and they're selling it, you know, in New York or wherever,
yeah, who
can tell if it's a Mexican or an Indian or just anybody they just happen to come across at that point in time. But the judge in there, his name is Judge Holden, is probably one of the most frightening characters I've ever come across in literature. But Cormac McCarthy's got a very unique writing style. He's also written All the Pretty Horses, which was made into a movie. He's written the Sunset Limited, I think. It's like a 2-person, 1-room play that has Tommy Lee Jones and Samuel L. Jackson. It's on HBO. It's.
I was gonna say I thought I heard of it. I was trying to figure out where.
And then he also wrote No Country for Old Men.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Have you read one of the ones that I read before? Actually, it was during these 800 something pages. I had to read something else for a little while. And what's McChrystal's new book? Team of Teams. You read that yet?
I've not.
That's a pretty decent one too.
And one of the things that they I keep hearing in different circles at the MEF is the one about the All Blacks.
Oh, the New Zealand, yeah.
Yeah, about the rugby team.
Yeah, that's where the Commandant did a Gazette article on that where he's talking about we shouldn't have to lose to learn.
Yeah.
That comes from that book, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I got a chance to see him speak when I was at the advanced course. He had just been installed as a commandant. And one thing he touched on immediately was Ghost Fleet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I was thinking about during the breaks, and switch it up here a little bit, I got a question for you, if you don't mind. We were talking, obviously, before the podcast. I think we were driving around somewhere, and somehow we started swapping stories about PME. And obviously, you read a lot and, understand things. How do you feel about how the Marine Corps approaches resident PME?
I think it's atrocious.
Yeah.
It's not in alignment with what we espouse to be the professionalization of the force. Yet, I think we're there's some positive steps in the right direction. For those of us in the intelligence community, there's plenty of opportunities, to apply for NIU and some of these internships with different agencies. I think in that regard, we have more doors available to us than most of our counterparts. But with that being said, I had the misfortune or I would say lack of foresight to get to PME early. I got to it late, and so when you look at the target population description for those courses, they're really eyeballing those guys that either are about to be pinned on, they've been selected, or they just got promoted, and PME, the resident PME, would then carry them through the rest of that grade as they prepare for the next steps in their professional development. I showed up a very senior gunnery sergeant to the advanced course, and did the same thing for career course, because I found myself so tied up into operational requirements wherever I happened to be, and I put PME on the back burner, partly because of the fact that I know that most of the stuff that I need to know out of the PME, I can kind of figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
Having developed my own formal school or formal course, MOS producing course, I know where to go to get the information that I need, in a timely fashion. It's probably not the best approach, but operational requirements being what they were, I mean, when I was a staff sergeant at the schoolhouse, was when I went to a career course. It's probably one of the reasons why I got a P. It was 4 slots, 4 in-zone Bubba's. I'm sorry, 3 slots, 4 in-zone staff sergeants, and I picked up a P. Lost out to 3 lap movers.
Oh!
Yeah, it was a gut check.
Yeah.
But
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I was confident going in. I had, everything was solid. The only thing that had hit me was looking at it. And I had a lot of senior master gunner sergeants reach out to me asking me, what the fuck, see? Like, I had one master guns ask me point blank, please, he told me, please tell me you beat your wife. Please tell me you've got a DWI or some other type of adversity in your paperwork to reinstall my faith in the process, because from everything I heard about you, there's no reason why you should have been passed, and I had nothing for him other than the fact that I did not go. And I gave him open kimono. Here's my OMPF master brief sheet. Take a look, Master Guns. And he wasn't my Master Guns. He was just a Master Guns in a key billet in the Ockfield at the time, and showed him everything. And what we could come up with was that I just didn't have the career course under my belt at the time when it wasn't required for promotion, but it seemed to be the limiting factor. Tragically, I had skipped out on the career course, knowing that it wasn't a requirement because right around that time is when my father had passed away, and I just didn't have the wind in my sail to get through that at that point in time. I had to take a knee.
Yeah, definitely.
And face outboard, lean on the guys to the left and right. I mean, that's where, it was in that environment that, I was really close to guys like Kyle Boone and Nick Watson and Chris Taylor and some of those other really solid individuals that were with me there in San Angelo. Having that community around me really helped.
Yeah, I just talked to Chris Taylor the other day as an email. He's in Tampa, right?
I believe so.
I think he's
MARSOC.
Yeah, MARSOC.
Yeah.
He's got a course that he put together with Joe Black for guys going to CENTCOM that we're getting seats to or whatever. It seems pretty legit.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He's a good dude. All heart. Yeah, him and Angela. They've got two monster young sons that are going to be they're just chips off the block, of Chris and but they've got definitely Angela's heart and smile. I remember the youngest we used to make fun of his youngest son because he's just a beast, but he would moan when he ate, like from a young age.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
You might just let him keep doing it.
Yeah.
he's an adult. Everybody's like, what the fuck?
Oh man! Which I heard. Actually, it was a Master Guns that I worked with when I was an MOS instructor. Steve Clinton. He retired. Me and Loretta are still close friends with him and his wife. And we were just having based on what you said there, it kind of reminded me of it. We were just talking about how funny it would be as parents. Obviously we wouldn't do this. It was just a joke, but to teach your kids the absolute wrong word for something to where as they're growing up, they think it's it. Like they'll point at this and be like, I want to sit on that table. And it's like, dude, that's a chair, but they're an adult.
Right. But to get back to your question, I think part of my perspective was fleshed out.
PME, is that what you're talking?
Yeah, from my experiences as a corporal. So bear in mind, I mentioned earlier I was a 3-year clearance holder at DLI.
Yeah.
Woe was me, right? Monterey, California.
Yeah.
Central Coast. It's beautiful.
That party must have sucked.
Yeah. I'd already graduated the Spanish course, and me and two other corporals, requested permission to take classes at Naval Postgraduate School while we were awaiting orders. And of course, the deck gunny at the time, who I still communicate with, and I love dearly, despite the fact that he's an abrasive individual, and not a lot of people have respect for him, but he was good to me. He said, no, fuck no. There's no reason why corporals need to be taking classes with majors and captains and lieutenant colonels and whatnot. And so we went around him and got it approved. And so my first look at professional military education was at Naval Postgraduate School as a corporal. Left hand, left knee, right hand, right knee with a bunch of officers.
Yeah.
And the class that we took was War in the Modern World. I learned so much in that class, Sonny, that anything that I had not done corporal's course, no sergeant's course. I mean, think about that. My first PME, I was in that environment. And when I got to finally go to, because I didn't do corporal's course, I didn't do sergeant's course. When I finally got to go to career course, I was like, you got to be fucking shitting me.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing like a JAG-man or something, and you're like, what the hell is this? Yeah.
Yeah, and so, that class was taught by Ambassador Minot, who was, if I recall correctly, a British infantry officer during the Korean War.
Oh, wow. We had a similar experience that I have. Have you heard of JSOW?
No.
So SOF has a PME that's kind of like Marine Corps University, but specifically for SOF, it's called JSOW, Joint Special Operations University. And they have a E6 and an E7 that's a non-resident, but it's basically like going to college. And kind of like what you're saying there, the very first classes that you're taking are high level interagency coordination with State Department, affecting institutional change, stuff like that, and then that's for the E6 one. Then you get into the E7 one, and it's just out of control, the stuff you're doing, the papers you're writing. It's really making you think, area studies, things like that, foreign military, building rapport, communication skills, stuff like that. And then they have a resident one for the senior enlisted. It's called GySgt, I think now. It's senior enlisted. It's for E8 and E9s around the SOF community. That's 6 months non-resident, and then I believe 2 or 3 months resident in Tampa. And that's
So the non-resident courses, are they available to anybody, DOD?
They, from what I believe, yes, SOF is going to have first come, first serve. Anybody with SOF MOS is like us with the 8071.
But the non-resident, I mean,
Yeah.
is it just like CBT, or you actually have to participate?
You have to participate.
Okay.
It's like online college.
Okay.
And the crazy thing about it is, I'm finishing up my degree right now with Norwich. I have 2 classes left. You damn near have a degree after doing the first 2 with Norwich University. So it's pretty solid. But then after that, I was way involved in all these soft PMEs with JSOW, and then I went to the advanced course. And not to shoot completely down Marine Corps PME, but this is higher level enlisted, because after that you have E8 seminar and a couple other things.
Which is atrocious.
Yeah, so this is, you still got peers sitting around, and I was expecting like high level conversations on things, and it's just kind of, same thing like in Sergeant's course, just pushing through, hey, write these papers, and you put your heart into it, and you could tell they just like 100, perfect, and you're like, come on, man. We're better than this. This is a higher level of this organization,
You're better than this. Yeah.
I stole your line.
What are you playing? What are you playing?
What do you mean?
So I asked you what you're reading. Do you play any games? Do you sit down with your boy and play chess?
So I
Checkers?
just got a chessboard.
Connect 4?
Yeah. So he's doing his video game thing, but he gets bored with it recently, like soon. So we've been doing Madden 18. He gets all the Maddens. He loves that. He's way into football, watching the games and whatnot. That's how he tracks where all the players are too. Madden, he knows all the guys. But just bought a chessboard about a week ago, because when me and Loretta first got together, we'd play at night all the time. And he was playing with my brother-in-law last week when he was in town. So it was cool to see him, like his 9-year-old mind.
Right.
Because, they go at it aggressive with no strategy, and then they're wondering why all their power players are gone. And so it's cool watching them all. So that's probably what we're going to pick up next is
It's chess.
chess together. Yeah.
Get a clock.
Yeah, to time it? Is that what you're saying? Like time?
Yeah. So when I was in San Angelo, one of the things I did besides the scouts stuff is I started a chess team at my son's elementary school, and half of the kids were gifted and talented, to include Enrique, and the other half were some rough kids. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget Bobby and Abel were 2 of my older boys, and you have to understand in San Angelo that there's not a lot of African Americans. It's just white and brown, and the dynamics there are sometimes harsh. And both of these young men didn't have solid role models, male role models in their lives. And, in comes Sammy Castro, Marine Staff Sergeant, who can get up in front of a crowd and, hold his own, and was beyond just taking care of mine. I was taking care of other people's kids and introducing them to chess and really kind of pushing them. And occasionally I take some of my student Marines. We'd cut out early on a Friday and go play chess with the kids at the school. But invariably sometimes I'd be running a little late. I'd call ahead to the school office because it was part of the after school program, and let them know, hey, I'll be there. I'm on my way, but I was caught up with something at work, and one time I walked in and all the chessboards had been laid out. My demonstration board was already up. It was already set up, back to set to zero, is what the term that I use to basically get back to the starting position. And kids were matched up, in accordance to skill strength and skill level, and clocks were out. And I just walked in and I just heard, just a slap into the clocks, and it's like, wow. I look, I knew who did it. It was my older boys, Bobby and Abel, and I say, I'm proud of you guys. You took charge, and you didn't have to do that, but you did. He said, it's okay, Mr. Sam. And so I'm sitting there just watching them, and I'm noticing that Bobby's king is in jeopardy, and I didn't know if he saw it or not. And so to kind of get him to think along those lines, I asked him the question, who are you on the board? And he looks at me and he tells me, I'm a pawn, Mr. Sam.
Getting deep with him.
But if I make the right moves, I can become any piece I want. And, that really hit me pretty hard, knowing that, the kid had just gone through a significant tragedy in his family, but got a lot out of the interaction that we had. And it's funny because, Enrique was a little bit younger, but a lot younger than those guys. I think he was in the first or second grade, and these kids were in the fifth. They took care of him because they were part of the same team. We used to take them out to other spots in West Texas to compete in tournaments and whatnot. And me being who I am, I want my kids to walk in and look good, feel good, perform well. The stuff that we do. And I got Walmart donated a bunch of polo shirts. I got another company to donate the embroidery. So with the Fort Concho rookies, and they walked in, they wearing their white shirts with their little embroidery patch on it, with a rook on it, and man, they felt like $1 million. And they walked in, and I got told later that the other kids were intimidated because they were in uniforms. Just the small things like that.
Yeah.
And part of it was the level of confidence that they exuded, just having that team identity. It was a good experience. I enjoyed teaching scholastic chess, introducing to them at a young age. We even gave a presentation we hosted a tournament. We Marined it up, of course. Brought in a bunch of Marines to help out with the administration. We did a Swiss round. But in between the rounds of the tournament, we had a pull-up competition, and we did a opening ceremony. Soon to be Master Sergeant Slaughter, if he's not been pinned on already, sang the national anthem at the beginning of it in his blues. And we did a CFT demonstrations, MICMAP demonstrations. We just Marined it up, of course. But then I gave a presentation to some of the administrators and parents there, displaying behind the scenes and kind of like breaking it out in detail, the formula that the kids have to use at the youngest age to be able to determine point value. One pawn equals 1 point. Knights and bishops are 3, rooks 5, queens 9, kings infinite. And I would set up a position, ask this young girl, without her knowing the answer. I didn't, smoke and mirrors them. Who's ahead of material? And she's like, black's up by 2 points, Mr. Sam. Okay, and then change the position up. Have a couple of exchanges, trades. Now who's up? White's up by 3, and so then I showed the breakout formula to the administrators. This is what this young lady just calculated in her head in a matter of seconds. And these administrators who have never used chess as a teaching tool were blown away by that. I think there's a lot of value added in playing. I don't play as often as I used to with the boys. They're on Minecraft and other games right now.
All that weird stuff.
Yeah, but it's interesting though, because my youngest in particular, he's using Java
Really?
in Minecraft.
Keep that going.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I don't. You talk about productive consumption. I think there's a lot of that in there to be had using games appropriately, but it can get carried away, right?
Yeah.
But to ensure that there's limits and whatnot. But they've gotten into the Minecraft thing right now. He's playing this game called Subnautica, which is kind of like Minecraft, but it's underwater. But you've got to get these components in order to be able to survive and go further in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely a lot of problem solving, critical thinking.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that. Rather than just them in receive mode watching YouTube or something like that.
Yeah. I've been making little bets with my son. I got him in trying to get him in tough guy mode. And he's got this, like, I don't want to say it's a busted ass bike, but he's got a bike that he's been riding for a while. We keep replacing the tires on it and whatnot, and you're kind of the bike that you have as a little kid is almost like a status symbol, right? And so we've been going to the pool a lot together, and he swims great, and he has no fear of the water. Like, he's going down to, as a 9-year-old, he's going down to 9-10 feet down at the bottom and touching it, looking at me coming up. So I'm kind of proud of that. So I was driving home, and I was like, man, I got to get him swimming laps. Just kind of pushing back past the tiredness, being out there in the deep water and pushing past the fear of it. So I made a deal with him. I was like, hey, check it out, man. If you could swim 500 meters, it's a 25-meter pool each lap, And I was like, each lap you could hold onto the wall for 5 seconds, but no more. Then you got to get right back into it and swim. But if you could do 500 meters with those short holds, I'll get you a new bike. There's no time limit on it. This could expire. You could be 18 and do this, and you get your, you know what I mean? Right. And he was pretty excited about it at first. He's been asking me to go to the pool and train and stuff. So I was like, wow, you just had to dangle this little carrot, And now he's interested in getting in there and getting in there.
Right.
I'll be honest. If he swam 300, I'd get him his bike. He doesn't know that though.
Right. No slack.
No slack. Yeah. Until it's your son, right?
Until it's your son.
Yep.
Yeah, and I tell Liz, I've got some neighbors in the towers there on Okie, and this young gunny, he's got 3 daughters, and the most beautiful, precious things on this earth. I am so glad I don't have little girls, because they would have me wrapped around their fingers. Yeah. I could be tough on my boys, and almost to a fault. And Liz is always there to kind of, rein me in when I get a little overzealous, let's say. But man, if I had daughters, they'd just eat me up.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine. Yeah. I think sometimes I go on the path of a little bit too hard with them, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I get the looks from my wife, and I'm like, let's back it up a little bit. But she does too sometimes.
You know Zach Ensminger?
Yeah.
You should see him with Layla. She's got him wrapped around her finger. Yeah. It's funny. So let me ask you, Sonny, if you go back in time, what piece of advice would you give Sergeant Sonnabend?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think so. A piece of advice that I got when I was a more senior staff sergeant at MARSOC from a guy. Did you know Dennis Weaver?
I don't think so.
He was the chief warrant officer there, and he gave me a piece of advice that really calmed me down when it came to my approach to training. And as a younger sergeant and as a team leader, there was probably a lot more information that I could have got to guys, but I probably turned a lot of them off with my aggression with it and my frustration. And what happened with Dennis Weaver was I was training a newer guy at MARSOC. This is before we had MDIOC, so it was kind of a new guy would show up, you'd grab him, and you'd run him through it all, right? This is how you do it. You spend months with him if you had to get him where you needed to be. And this guy was a problem child, wasn't right for the organization, eventually left, right? But I was trying to teach him something, and I forget what technology it was based on, and it was with equipment, and I just lost it. He wasn't getting it, and I lost my patience with him, and I was just all over him about like the importance of it and how he needed to blah, 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 and I didn't understand why he didn't get it. And Dennis grabbed me and pulled me aside, and he goes, "It's easy because you know it." And so
Yeah.
that kind of opened up my aperture a little bit, and
Yeah.
I was like, you're right, and there's probably things that I struggled with, and it took me a while to learn it, and if I had some guy all in my face about it, I could have turned off to it. So after he said that to me, I looked back to my radio recon team leader days and stuff like that, and I'm like, man, how many guys did I shut off? That could have stayed around. Who knows if some of them got out, or maybe just their thought of me was, man, that guy's an idiot, or just yeah. Once Dennis told me that, so since then I've approached things like that when we made MDIOC and now here in RP. I try not to get too frustrated with things that seem simple to me because I've been doing it for so long. When a younger guy's looking at it, I remember that it's easy because you know it. You got to step back
Right.
on it.
Any regrets?
Yeah, yeah, a few. And it's kind of a two-way street. Some of the regrets I have is how much time I didn't have with my family when I spent so much time operational, and then we get here and I see my wife and my son have this relationship that I'm the outsider to, and I'm creeping my way in there.
Right.
I'm getting in there. I'm starting. It's easy when you're the dad. And
It's like
the
an
boy,
insert, right?
Yeah. He's gonna come.
Special purpose insert.
Yeah. But it's you got to build rapport and get everything going. But then there's the flip side of that too, to where, and we almost touched on this a little bit earlier. There's that with guys in the circle that I was running in. There's almost like a fear of missing out operationally.
Yeah.
And I would come back from a company, an MSOC, fresh out of Afghanistan, and the guys that would be there, I'd be jealous of them. I'd be like, oh man, they're getting in these fights and they're doing all this great stuff, and damn it, I need a redo. And I did just fine and did all the same stuff on mine, but they were doing it more recent, and I'd be 2 or 3 months out of country and feel irrelevant. And I'd want to get back in there and start doing that. So on the same side to where I'm saying I feel that I missed out on family time, I think I learned a shit ton by getting thrown to the fire. That's the only, like what we were just talking about when we were off mic here about the training environment of learn it, do it. You know what I mean? And
Right.
force them into that situation. I got to do that operationally. So it's not a complete regret that I did that, but sometimes when I'm with my family, I'm like, ooh, I may have missed out on this or that,
Yeah, that's one of the things that Gecko handed me was that you don't get these years back. The Marine Corps is a jealous mistress, and she's gonna cut you loose eventually,
And the world will go on.
and the world will go on. It won't even hit a speed bump,
Yeah.
because part of being part of something greater than yourself is that it's greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, it doesn't need us as much as we think it does.
Yeah, it's kind of an ego thing, right? I think, too, the other regret, that's the one when you asked me, I was kind of like, and it was on the tip of my tongue, and, I was going to dance around it a little bit, but I'll go ahead and open up about it. We talked about this when we were eating lunch the other day, too. When I left the MOS instructor bid and then went to MARSOC, I fell out of touch with Joe. And I was very close with Joe. We grew up in RP together, roommates, teammates, all that stuff. And it almost seemed like it went by in fast forward, and then he passed away. And I look back at that now, and I think about our conversations, and I was like, man, was I talking about me that whole time? You know what I mean? What was he going through? I wasn't there, so
Yeah.
I kick myself in the ass about that. There's a piece of me that I beat myself up thinking that I wasn't there for my friend. Who knows? Maybe I'm just being too hard on myself with it. But
You can't know. I mean, I think that's the first part of it. I mean, and we're not perfect. We make mistakes, and it's a balance, right? I mean, you've got your family, and you're recovering from all that pressure that you were under, and then I mean, it's hard. You know, and as I mentioned, you know, I saw him, I reached out to him, you know, and I told him, I said, get in touch with me. I'm here in town. Let's hang out. You know, I want to see how you're doing. And he didn't call. And I didn't press it. I could have been more aggressive about it, but I wasn't. And so, you know, I have those same creeping thoughts. But I've learned from that. And when I do get that tingling spidey sense, I act on it now in a much more, I guess, responsive fashion. And you know, I had that last time I was here with Cantu. I asked him, "How are you doing?" Because I knew he was undergoing some adversity, and you know, he didn't want to open up completely because you know we were around some of the junior Marines, and you know his daughter was there, and other times, and so I made it a point that instead of you know staying out in town or grabbing a hotel, I went and crashed with him. So you know, we got up in the morning, made breakfast, came into work together, got to see him in his environment, just to kind of get a spot check on him, you know, headspace and timing.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, and I can honestly say that I did my good turn.
Yeah.
I looked out for my brother, and you know, unfortunately, it's something I had to learn the hard way. I don't tell many other Marines this, but I lost a really close friend of mine when I was 15 years old. His name was Celso Lubet, and I think about him all the time. I mean, we bought the same shoes, just different colors, and we'd swap one of each. And I mean, just
Yeah.
spending at each other's house on weeknights. I mean, that was how close we were, and you know, we grew up and kind of grew apart at a time when the drug trafficking and gang violence was really starting to kick off in Texas, and he got caught up in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time, and some guys killed him. And, you know, it was just one of those things that is. It was a very formative experience. And it's driven home the point that, you know, from then on, it's all borrowed time.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I don't know if you remember, but, you know, I joined the Marine Corps at 23, a little bit older than the average knucklehead. It's a recruiter's wet dream. And so I came in with a different mindset than most of our peers. And that Celso was part of that, and you know, it's helped in some ways because it kind of inoculated me to loss and grief and all that. Obviously, you know, certain situations it's not going to compare losing your father or somebody like that. I mean, that's going to hit you. But since Weldon. I also lost a really close friend of mine, another Marine. DePietro was killed. He's that good fellow. I snatched him up out of the letter company down there in San Antonio, brought him up to the schoolhouse, even though he hadn't done a fleet tour, technically. But he was a good fit, sharp young man, but got killed by a drunk driver riding a bike.
I think I remember this story, or heard about it at least.
Yeah, really good dude, man. But, you know, it's funny because right before I PCS'd out of there, Liz was undergoing breast cancer treatment down in Galveston, but I had to come finish checking out. So when I came up, I stayed with him. We stayed together for about, I think it was about maybe 2-3 weeks. I was there finishing up checkout and all that stuff before we actually left the country. Got my country clearance to go to the DR, and I mean, you know, it's kind of like being in the barracks, but it was in his house. You know, go to the grocery store, bring it back groceries. You know, I'd cook, he'd clean, vice versa, and we just talk shit, play video games on our laptops, and watch HBO miniseries and stuff like that. And when he died, it was hard to swallow. But I know that every moment that I had with him, I took full advantage of it. And I try to take that same approach with regard to leadership, the junior Marines, in that you don't have them forever.
Yeah.
But now I've got the longevity to see that. I didn't see that before. Team leader as a sergeant, I was an asshole. Probably not as big as asshole as others, but I did take care of my guys. But sometimes I think I could have softened up my approach. I'm still somewhat being described by others as somewhat intense.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But like I said, you don't have these guys forever.
Yeah.
And I want to be to them a Joe Black, a Gecko, a Crawdaddy, one of those positive influences that they'll look back and say, there's a lot of things that Top Castro did for me, gave to me, taught me. I'm going to put more of that in my toolbox, as opposed to the stuff that I am not going to do with those things that he did.
Yeah. Have you ever had that time too, to where you see the guys and you see where they're mimicking your good traits, but you also see them mimicking your bad traits, and you want to jump in there and be like, don't do that, man. I'm humbled and,
Yeah.
but Jesus, don't do that.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that. I've seen that more than once.
Yep.
What adversity have you had to deal with?
As far as
Like professional adversity, adverse fit rep?
no, none of those yet. Not yet.
Failed PFT, CFT?
No,
Anything like that?
I'm good on
Have
those.
to tape?
No.
Overweight?
No, I'm not.
Military appearance?
Yeah, no, I'm good on that. A lot of the struggles that I've had career-wise was with being a 2651, because I've never done that MOS job. I went in the radio battalion. I was in the S6 for probably 48 hours.
And decided this is not the place for me.
Negative, and they the RP came over, and it was Sergeant Joe Farina.
Yeah.
And he was like, who's retiring here in 2 weeks, flying out to Maryland for it. And he came over and he was like, hey, you want to come over to RP? And I was like, absolutely. And that was back when you weren't allowed in the office. If you were a ripper, you had to sit outside, rain, snow, whatever you said outside, that's where you were. And
Which would be considered hazy nowadays,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, and that's where I met Joe Weldon and all the guys I went through RIP with. We sat out on the logs and froze our asses off together and grew as a team, shared adversity. And so my first tour, SIGINT was something that I just loved, because, and it was like I made that comment before about the newer guys now haven't got to do real world stuff, so they are kind of like, oh, this is bullshit, I don't want to do this, I'm tired of sitting in the woods looking at them out,
Right.
Stuff like that. I fell in love with the job when my first deployment. I got to do real world stuff in Afghanistan, late 03, early 04, and the first time I got to do something to where I heard an enemy talking, I was like, this is for me.
Right.
But MOS wise, as you grow up the tree, it becomes harder and harder as a 51 to stay in that. And I know a lot of guys at MARSOC that would be like, hey man, how did you get to stay in this side? And then even as I like to think I was decently successful at MARSOC on the SIGINT side. And then even recently coming here, it was a fight not to go to the 6. And Master Guns actually helped me out a ton. He's like, no, it's a complete waste of talent. Not a waste, because it's not a waste to be in the S6, but we need you over there in the platoon and things like that. So I kind of became a guy that was looked to for advice on the collection side and all that stuff. And it's funny when people find out that I'm a 51. Some of the guys are like, "Holy shit!" And I'm like, "Yeah, how's it feel to a guy that's never formally been taught this to be smoking?" Little check with it. But as I go up the tree, it's going to be harder and harder to stay there unless what I'm going to try to do and what I've been doing my whole career is to be that SME, to where they're kind of forced to have me in there, or it's going to be a loss. I have a long way to go still. I have tons to learn. A piece that Joe taught me was
Which Joe?
Joe Black. Yeah, I keep bouncing back and forth between him and Joe Farina.
And then we mentioned Joe Weldon earlier.
Yeah,
too.
Joe Weldon. Yeah. On my 2010, 2011 deployment, I ended up a bunch of the injuries added up, and I ended up getting hurt there. Also had a few TBIs from a couple explosions, and then an RPG impact sidelined me. I was telling you the story the other day, and Joe pulled me up into the G2, and he's like, "You're going to take a year off. You're going to help build curriculum for these guys." And I was having a conversation with him one time, and it's like we were talking about people like us. When you get put on the bench, you feel like it's because you're like, "Oh shit, what did I do wrong?"
Yeah.
You know? And Joe took me aside, and he's like, "You obviously shown that you're a good collector, you're a good team leader, and you're tactically proficient. I mean, shit, you've been out there fighting and doing it. Now you need to learn the policy side of it." And I'll tell you what, man, he took me under his wing, and just all the shit that he exposed me to as far as the why of the job, and later on in my career at MARSOC, I got to do a different thing and be at the Theater Special Operations Command level, to where you're dealing with generals and speaking policy, and it's the shit that Joe exposed me to where I was able to get guys on the ground to be able to do things because I could effectively speak at a higher level of why they should do it, So, yeah, kind of bounced around there from the adversity that I had. So the adversity would be the 51 side of it, and then trying to stay with the collector. But you could niche yourself if you learn the collection, and even the higher ranks you get can integrate at the bayonet level, and then also go up to the general officer level and talk policy and put it in. You're going to become an asset and get pushed past that. But the guys that are always going to strive to be the team leader or the button pusher, you're going to fail. You know what I mean? You got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to start learning the law on things and being able to speak and get guys that are button pushers in there. You got to back up from that. It's not always going to be you. You got to let the younger guys go out and do it and put them in a position to be successful.
It's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed stepping outside of the SIGINT community and going into the DAS, the Defense Attaché System, just for a hot minute to kind of see what that world was like, and without realizing it, I learned so much with regard to how a country team operates and where we fall into that scheme of maneuver, and then the difference between the DAO and the MIL group or the Security Cooperation Office, and how they function together and how they don't, and what the differences are, and those different lanes, and understanding the intricacies and the subtleties of what the LEGAT does, what the Chief of Station does, what the list goes on, RSO, and stuff that was transparent to me prior to being assigned out there, getting to interact with General Kelly and Vice President Biden and the ambassador, and translate for some of these treaty negotiations, and I mean all that stuff. I would not have been able to do that if I would have just stayed exclusively in the SIGINT realm. And it really kind of highlighted what a vast, spectrum there is as it pertains to our OC field. Even though it wasn't necessarily in our OC field, but the language piece was definitely intense. Dominican Spanish is pretty rough.
I had he's a well-known colonel in the SOF community, and he's a just a brilliant man, and kind of disappeared into the Middle East for about 10 years of his career because of his language skills. And I, at one point when I did this thing at my old unit and moved into a different cell with it, you had to do a selection. There was a board at the end, and this colonel was the president of the board, right? So I go in there, and there's probably 40 people. That's an exaggeration, maybe 30, 20 people on this board. And their whole job, it's SF warrant officers and shit. Their whole job is to murder board you and make you feel not worthy and see if you're going to hang in there. And I was eating it because I knew that's what they were going to do, and
Right.
I was prepared for it. And then it got to him at the end, and this guy could really take you down to the floor, you know. And he goes, "How long have you been a 2600 and doing this cutting edge type of stuff?" And at the time, I think it was like 14 years, something like that. And I was like, 14 years, all of it on Teams and this and that. And he goes, "What language do you speak?" And I was like, "Well, none. I didn't get a chance to go to DLI." And he goes, "Yeah, that's fine. What language did you teach yourself? Would you?" And I was like, "None." And he goes, "You've been a 2600 for 14 years and you never learned a language. You should be ashamed of yourself." And I was like, "Damn, he's right."
Yeah.
Because it's a huge capability.
So what language do you speak now?
None, because none well.
But okay.
Because at the time I took it and I was like, you know what, I need to self-learn. So I was, SOCOM has, it's called SOFTS, SOFTS, I forget what it stands for, but it's a language program that you could, they give you a laptop, you VTC in with your instructor. And I did Spanish for about 4 months with it, and then I was getting too AO focused. And then I was like, you know what, no, I need to focus on, we were doing stuff in the Pacific, so I was like, I need to do Tagalog. And I spent some time in the Philippines, so I was learning it down there. Conversation level, I was able to hang with it. So
Maybe 1 plus.
when I was leaving the Philippines, I probably could have. Now I could barely say hello,
Right.
and then it was like, okay, we need to focus now in the Middle East, and you just can't self-learn that shit. Well, I can't.
Yeah.
So I tried dabbling with that, and then we went to South Africa, and I was dealing with French. So I was getting at the entry level of all these languages, and I was like, man.
Just enough to be dangerous.
Yeah. And so I actually talked to that colonel again later on, and I was like, sir, I'm bouncing around in these languages and blah, blah, blah. I need to get committed on one and go through with it. And he is like, Sonny, language is a lifestyle.
It is.
You gotta take one and you gotta go with it, and don't let yourself bounce around or whatever. Pick an AO and be an expert and learn that language. Yeah. So I'm gonna learn one before my goal is before I retire, I'm gonna have a DLPT on the record in some language, Once we get some of these guys in the shoot and train, I'm gonna start focusing on myself again.
There you go. So I would recommend Spanish, since you're going to be going to Texas anyway.
Yeah. Sorry to any of the Texans that want to kick my ass.
If not for the Marine Corps, where would you be?
That's a good question. In trouble.
Yeah, you and me both, brother.
Yeah, when we, I said it earlier, I grew up in New Jersey, and when I was a freshman in high school, it's probably the story that every Marine has. My oldest brother that I said was 9 years older than me ended up passing away when he was 22. I wasn't a freshman, I was in 7th grade when he passed away. And that changed a lot for me because he was my older brother and kind of the protector. And then once he was gone, that safety net was gone, and I was like, holy shit, I need to have some credibility myself, and
Right.
kind of taught me that and pushed through it. So me and my brother started going down the wrong path, feeling sorry for ourselves and doing stupid shit. We're getting out of New Jersey. I grew up in North Jersey. So we moved to, my aunt and uncle lived out in a suburb of Cleveland. We went out there, and it was probably the first 2 weeks I was in Ohio. I met this guy, same age as me, Nick Torres, and he was all in with that fucking, the DEP program or whatever. And he just kind of grabbed me and was like, this is what you need to do. This is badass. That other stuff isn't badass. This is badass.
Yeah.
So I came in and just been running ever since, So if I never met Nick and my parents didn't make that decision to move, I would have probably been some piece of shit somewhere.
Where's Nick at right now?
He did He's an engineer on a train now. I still keep up with him. Him and Joe Weldon were the best men at my wedding, dual best men, but shared the responsibility. But yeah, in Costa Rica, speaking none of Spanish.
I can only imagine.
Joe did though. Joe kept the room.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Nick's he's an engineer. He works for CSA now. He was an 0811 with Golf battery. I ended up floating with him. That was the battery that went out with me on the 2.2 Mu. So
Okay.
yeah, still keep up with those guys. But
That's cool.
He messed up his back. Got MedSep lifting up fucking RD shells.
That'll do it. That'll do it. Are you a religious man, Sonny?
Yes, not. I don't go to church as much as I should.
Yeah, you and me both.
Being as in probably I haven't been in a church other than going to the chapel up by Section 60 for when friends were killed and whatnot. But I'm definitely a believer. Me and Loretta talk about it a bunch. My mom was a really big believer, and obviously my mentors are Crawdaddy and Joe Black and those guys. So
It has an influence, right?
yeah, one of the things I'll never
Tell me who you walk with. I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah, one of the things I'll never forget was me and Joe used to do ruck runs together at MARSOC all the time when I was up in the G2, and he was trying to show me that I wasn't hurt. I was,
Once again, Joe Black.
Joe Black, yeah. And I call it a rant, but it was hilarious, and I still think back about this. He started talking about Jesus, and he was like, people think religion's soft or being saved is soft because of the images that they paint of Jesus. They make him look feminine. The man was a carpenter. And he's going on, he's like, Jesus was a rough man, he worked with his hands. All those images are wrong, so people think it's sissy stuff, and that's just not the way it was, And I always think back to that. Another one was Crawdaddy. Somebody was telling a story about him, and, he has a heroic story about him with some of the, a very humble man, so he wouldn't call it that. But I forget who it was that was telling me the story, but they were talking with him about with him being saved and all that, how he could fight as hard as he did in some of the situations. And very sternly, he told him the Lord needs soldiers too.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, that's what Michael was, right? The archangel.
Yeah.
So kind of shifting up. How do you stay in the know? How do you keep track of current events? Where do you get your news?
A few ways. I hate them, but I set notifications on my phone.
Okay.
And I use this app that's called. You got to have a subscription to The Economist, but it's called Espresso, and it gives you like the top 7 global stories of the day, and it's kind of just highlights, and you could cruise through them.
Okay.
And then once again, my AO bouncing around. I set Google alerts to whatever AO I'm focused on at the time.
But it's not perfect, apparently.
No, and where I'm sitting now, I'm very focused on the Pacific.
Yeah.
And, truly believe it's a really important mission out here. I don't want to downplay what's going on in U.S. CENTCOM, but I spent the majority of my fighting time there. And near the end, I think where it really hit me the most, I've had more than a handful of friends killed in combat that, we put them to rest in Section 60 and do all that stuff. And I really believed it was for a good cause, and I was behind it. And one of the guys that I looked up to that was, he was in the 4th platoon on my first float, and I kept up with him all through MARSOC, a guy named Gunny John Gifford. When he was killed, it kind of hit me. It was like, wow, if he could get killed, it could happen to anybody,
Yeah.
And then I started probably going down the wrong path with it. I was thinking, yeah, he died fighting for his country, and his brothers. What happened when he was killed? He was definitely protecting his brothers and actually protecting his partner force, Afghans. And then I was looking at the target set that we're going after, and I was like, are these guys hardcore Talibs, or are they drug dealers?
Right.
So I don't want to say I wasn't committed to the mission anymore, but I was kind of looking at what are we doing here? Who are we targeting? Are these the guys that hurt us, or are we just a presence now looking for targets to go after? And then I switched my AO focus to the Pacific with the units that I was with in MARSOC. And then once I got out here and started seeing the stuff that was going on wow, with one of my deployments, I was like, wow, a lot of the CENTCOM problems interact into the Pacific, you know, and then you start to look at real adversaries and, you know, the real problem that could be out here. And it's actually the battalion commander we have now. He was talking to me one time, and he brought up, he was like, there's a real menace out here, and if we don't deal with it, our kids are gonna. And you know, as a father, that kind of hits you to a point of, I already got some shrapnel, I could take some more, as long as my son doesn't have to do it. So I'm not saying that I'm beating the drum for war, but I would definitely like to handle the problem set before our boys have to.
Speaking of your boys and handling the problems, would you let your son become a Marine?
Ooh. So I joke about it all the time with Loretta because I know she doesn't want him to, or she doesn't want him to think that he has to. So a little thing
he's dual Marine Corps in the house. I mean, Mama.
Yeah, and
He's a Marine.
He's a great swimmer. He's got a heroic story about him from when he was younger that he gets embarrassed when I tell, because he's keeping it humble, you know. And I joke around with him. I tell him, I'm like, you know what, Rocco? You could go to any college you want as long as it's the Naval Academy.
So you'd want him to be an officer?
Yeah, I'd like him to get the education and then come in, not saying that enlisted men don't lead, because we definitely do. It's all a part of our life, and starting from the ground up, you know, being the follower into the leader, that type of thing. But just because he's my son, I'd like him to start out, you know, in a position to where he's leading men right away. I wouldn't mind at all if he went to any other service. My grandfather and my father, my uncle were Army guys, Vietnam, World War II, things like that. So I, you know, not completely in love with the idea of him being in the Marine Corps, but I'd like him to be in a time where they're worried about budgets and training and not war, you know, Clinton year type shit.
What do you suck at, Sonny?
Communication.
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
That-
We've been talking for like, what, almost 2.5 hours right now.
Yeah.
Even longer if you include the breaks.
Yeah.
Communication with who?
Up and down. One of my...
So you're talking professional communication.
Professional communication. When one of the counselings, we'd get counselings in that cell that I was in right before I left MARSOC, and one of the things that the bosses would tell me is, you guys run with it, man. You run with it, you get it done, but you don't explain what you're doing up and down. And we support it, but we just want to know like what's going on and where we're going with this. And I kind of sometimes get, because I understand the policy and how to push things. So before we know it, we're deep into it, and maybe the people above and below don't understand the why. So I know that that's a problem with me. So with the younger guys, I try to, almost to a fault, explain the why. You know, rather than being, oh, I understand it, so, you know,
Right.
you know, that type of thing.
Just like this whole program that you're putting together with regard to training and RP. Do the young Marines know why you have to insert it into a database in McTims? Do they understand that?
They probably hear me swearing about it a bunch, you know, clicking on the things. And you, more than anybody, know this from the MOS instructor side of it. You got to kind of have that, this is the standard, this is why we train to it, you know. And then from the leader side of it, you got to go to the TNR conferences and change those standards if they're not what's right, and move to where you need to go. You can't be stuck with this is the way it's always been done. You know what I mean? You can't be afraid of the change, and maybe look at your program and shake it up a little bit. Yeah, the documenting side of it sucks, though. The administrative work side of it sucks. Yeah, but it's a necessary evil, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with one of our peers here, earlier this week, and he was coming up with a bunch of great ideas, and yeah, we're working on this and we're doing that, and I said, awesome. Do you have anything on paper so I can brief what you're talking about at the MEF? And like, yeah, nah. I'm like, come on, brother.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just not one for writing. I'd rather not do it so I don't have to write it. And I said, you just can't roll like that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you see a problem and it needs to be addressed, the easiest way to do it is obviously to get it done, but you've got to go the next step and let other people know what you're doing and why it makes sense, because otherwise it'll just be you and your immediate vicinity that will benefit from all that hard work and effort. You know, and I had a STO DAT, my first STO DAT at the embassy. I love that man. We still stay in touch to this day. We went through a little bit of adversity together, but one of the things that he instilled in me is a grunt. He was, you know, what do I know? Who else needs to know it? Have I told them? And you know, it was the first time I had heard that I could recall, and it was almost 2012. You'd think I would have heard that before.
Yeah.
But I hadn't. Part of that was being stuck on the bench at the schoolhouse, you know, for several years. But
Necessary evil.
Necessary evil. But yeah, you know, and I think there's a lot of that reluctance to just sit down and grind away at a laptop or a workstation and to write that stuff out. But man, if you don't, you know, the price is heavy.
Guy Waybright kind of taught me a lot of that. One of his rules when me and him deployed together was, when you got back from a mission, no matter how bad the gunfight was or anything, you cleaned your rifle, accounted for the equipment, and wrote your AAR before you went to sleep while it was all fresh in your head. And that's one of the things that I try to always implement in training, even if it's just a bullshit training exercise. Sit down, put it on paper, disseminate it. You know, so
Right.
we're not. The problem that we have as a Marine Corps with that is collecting all that, right? Because we're
Right.
fixing the same problems that somebody else fixed a decade ago, and I'm sure it's on paper somewhere, but where is it? You know.
It's funny you mention that, because it's something that Colonel Hurton and I were discussing a while back. The deputy G2. You know, when you get back from a mission, your first job is to prep for the next mission, because you don't know when it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, PMs on your truck, fill it up with gas. You know, you have to resupply on your ammo, whatever you got, whatever was expended needs to be replenished, and you know, of course, like you said, the after actions need to be drafted up. But you know, it's frustrating for me, because you know, every time I come back to Rabin, you know, the last two times, including this one, you know, I see things that I wish I could tighten up. But if I'm doing that as a guest here from the MEF, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was an evaluator for last year's McCree, and you know, it gave me some opportunity to kind of get out into the field and talk to some of those SSTs, and of course the RT with fucking stacked deck, because you guys know about the dog and pony show better than anybody. but you know, some of these SSTs, and I asked them, I said, you know, how long have you guys been training together? And like, we just found out like last week who we were going to be on teams with, and so you know, that rhythm and understanding, you know, who does what, and load plan and kill sheet, EDL, SOP, mission execution checklist. None of that stuff was really put together. Team log, collection log, you know, nothing. And you know, for me, it was being an SST guy. It's kind of heartbreaking that they weren't getting the love, but from what I've seen, that's changing. I have seen a significant amount of progress in the battalion in a little over a year that I've been in the theater, and that warms my heart.
Yeah. One of the things, it's kind of an interesting perspective that I get to see it at is when I left the radio battalions, I was a sergeant. And then in soft, kind of every, we've had master sergeants go out on teams and, things like that. So I was kind of disconnected from the actual collection team structure of it. And now coming back to radio battalion, it shocked me the lack of responsibility that we give to sergeants. And this is a Jared Jadson phrase here. At the risk of sounding like a helmet head, I'm a champion of the sergeants. I truly believe in the backbone of the Corps there and giving those guys more responsibility. And I try to do that in the platoon now. And I see that, there's meetings to where they'll say, hey, we need all the platoon leadership and the staff to come to it. And I won't go. I'll send a sergeant. And it's starting to be, not because I feel that I don't need to be there, but I feel that when it comes to the radio reconnaissance thing, it could be Gunny sitting around the table, but it's going to be a sergeant sitting there from us because that's who truly runs and leads the mission. And if we do this next big thing, I think we're going to be so decentralized that those guys need to be used to making decisions.
I agree. So when I first mentioned to you the idea of a podcast, what did you think?
My honest first thought was because of the sensitivity of our job, what the fuck are we going to talk about? That's what I was thinking. Mm-hmm. And I was, but you'd skirt around it a bunch and talk about employment and different things. But now actually sitting down and doing it, and as long as we've been sitting here talking, I still feel that there's a lot more to talk about, especially if you get other guys on here talking about their perspective of it. And as a matter of fact, when we were just talking about the writing and the communicating thing in the AARs, it popped in my head. I was like, man, when Kyle Boone, when he's wants to push this program so far forward, and me and him together, we're really, really pushing the envelope with it. But every time I come up with hey, we should do this, and he's right. He's always like, yeah, we got to write an info paper on that. And I'm like, fuck. Because it's more ready. And then as I was thinking that, I was like, man, you should get Kyle on here. That'd be interesting to see the way.
That was going to be my next question. Like, who would you recommend as my next guest? It would be kind of like a way, like a gimmick. You tap the next guy. It's like, I did it. I sat down with Sammy and, we shot the shit.
Yeah.
First record.
Obviously, Kyle.
Yeah.
On that, because he'll have an interesting perspective of
Definitely.
it, especially as being in the same community as an enlisted man and then as an officer. It'd be interesting to hear him talk about something. That's definitely one I'd listen to.
Yeah, but the thing about him is he's going to have to be very measured.
Yeah. Tell him limited release.
Be sapped.
Yeah. You got to subscribe for that one.
Yeah.
Who else? Willie would be an interesting one.
So it's interesting. I don't know Willie very well. We've communicated a couple of times via email, but I don't think I've ever, because he's a linguist, right?
Arabic.
Yeah. So I think we probably ran across each other at DLI, because I was there forever. So I know we must have, but I just don't remember him. Obviously he came out here, right? After DLI.
I'm pretty sure.
He wasn't an East Coast guy.
No. I want to say it was Fort Gordon.
Okay.
I want to say he was there into the creation of MARSOC, and then was at MARSOC and then the Monitor.
Okay, so he didn't go to a Radbin.
No.
Okay. Well, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
Why we didn't cross paths.
I think Sean Nicow would be an interesting guest too.
Man, that guy, he's an abrasive individual.
You'd have to block off about a week.
Yeah, you think so? Yeah, he's opinionated.
Yeah.
And but I'll say this about him. The first time I met him, it was at First Radbin, and I happened to have. It wasn't Nick. It was Kyle Boone and Jeff Graham with me. We were on a road show from San Angelo to all the gaining units to discuss our programs of instruction across the board, from MARC to the language classes. And for whatever reason, it was decided that even though I was a Spanling course suit, they were going to send me to first and third. Was it first and where did we go? We came out here. I don't remember. We did first. Yeah, we did first, and we came here in Hawaii to present our programs of instruction. And he met up with us at Pendleton, and just immediately kind of debowed the conversation. He had a lot of great ideas, but his delivery and his mannerisms kind of derailed or circumvented what he was trying to get across. But for me, I can extract ego from the equation. I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah.
For the most part. And I could see like Grant and Boone were kind of like what's up with this guy, man? I mean, I don't know how well either of them knew him. Probably as good as I did. But afterwards, he met up with us to have dinner, have a few beers, and I came to understand it's because he's so passionate about the work, and he really cares. And that's been my experience with him. Comes across rough, but when you get down to the heart of the matter, it's because he gives a shit. Mm-hmm. And I would rather that.
Yeah.
Than the other end of the spectrum, where you have those guys that don't give a shit and they're just assholes for no particular reason at all.
Yeah.
Sean Acal may be an asshole, but he's an asshole who cares.
Yeah, absolutely.
And which makes him my brother.
Yep. A real interesting one, because you wouldn't have to talk that much at all. You just have to tee it up. Would be Sean Acal and Kyle Cornett.
Yeah, I don't know Cornett very well, but
he's going down to Goodfellow next.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be a real interesting one, because they're both opinionated. They're
Right.
both very passionate about it, and obviously the good of the community is behind their intent, but I don't think they'd see eye to eye on a lot of the issues, and it'd be a rolling conversation,
Yeah. And I'd like to go back and get some legacy guys like the retirees,
Yeah.
the ones that are out, but. I want to grab Simmons while I'm here in Hawaii.
Yeah, he's still out here, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. He'd be
That'd be another good one.
Yeah, it'd be a fun conversation. What about Joe Farina?
Yeah, he'd obviously with his career path, he's got a bunch of experience with it, but Joe's almost so humble that you'd be pulling information. You know what I mean? He's probably the best guy in our community. The best guy.
You think so?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a bold statement.
And
MVP. First team.
Yeah.
All singing.
Huge New England sports fan.
Yeah.
But we were just in a text message conversation when I was out in Guam. Me, Billy, and a bunch of the other guys were putting together what we were going to have as quotes on Joe's retirement paddle. And man, you should have seen some of the ones that were flying across there. And one that I put in, because he became an officer after being a radio recon team leader stint at SOTG, and he was the AOIC on my second MEU when I was a team leader. And once Joe became an officer, I think one of the most common quotes that I heard him say is, "Do you have everything you need?" And that kind of sums him up all the way up to when he was a company commander at MARSOC and the stuff that he's doing now. Every time I seen him, "You have everything you need. What do you need?" Because that was something that he was concerned with.
Yeah. It's a hallmark of a solid leader. Mm-hmm. Taking care of his boys. What are you missing?
Yep.
Yeah. I've seen that same trend in a lot of effective leaders. Now that I think about it. one I probably should probably be doing more of. I think I do that enough. Probably could do it more often.
Yeah.
You good? That's kind of like my go-to. Are you good?
Yeah. And most guys, any dude worth his salt is probably gonna tell you, we got it. So you gotta navigate past that.
But that's what I mean. I don't think "are you good" is the same as "do you have everything you need."
Mm-hmm.
That's a level of specificity
Yeah.
that might elicit the appropriate response. Well, we could use more of this, and then boom, you get it right before they go out the door.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. How much longer you got?
And what, tonight? Or
In uniform?
I say all the time I'm not going to do a day over 20.
You'd be a fool to, right?
Yeah. The wife's the breadwinner now.
Yeah,
It's like-
there's so much money to be made outside. Quality of life, maybe.
Yeah, I'm always going to be in the community though. If I when I leave here, it's going to be to hang up the uniform and then to hopefully move over with guys like Billy and Crawdaddy and Harry Wing and those dudes and start training some of the soft guys out there, staying relevant and doing it. When Guy got out, he told me. I debated with him on this, and I still debate in my head whether this is the correct statement or not. He said, when you're in uniform, you can't be a professional SIGINTer. And what he meant by that was you got to do all the other stupid shit. Not stupid shit, I say that, right? But you got to do all the other shit. You got to worry about all the Marine Corps stuff to where when he got out, he was able to focus on training, and really doing it. And I saw the jump in his SIGINT game. He was good. He was good before, one of the best, But when he was out and that's what he could focus on, he shot through the roof, and I kind of grabbed his coattails.
Right.
Let as much of that knowledge fall off into me as I could. But yeah, so maybe not that much longer left in uniform. We'll see what, and it goes back to what I was saying before, being a 2651. I'm not, if I could be a 91 and go into these important positions and, affect the SIGINT game, the top game, I'd stay in. But that's not in the cards for me, so I got to navigate to where I can still affect change.
Okay. And you think retirement-wise, you guys will end up somewhere in...
Right now, the plan is Loretta's from Oklahoma, so I definitely don't want to go back to city life, so build fire-based Sonnabend out there, and, Crawdaddy's company's out of Oklahoma City, so start doing some of the training out there if he'd hire me on.
When's the last time you've been to Oklahoma?
Right before I PCS'd out here. We do a lot of training out there. We're teaching some guys some stuff.
I've been up there a couple of times. I like Oklahoma.
Yeah,
it's not too different from Texas.
No, and Oklahoma City's pretty cool too. You got
Yeah.
sports teams and everything else you need there. Maybe I'll do a little bit of time on the East Coast, work-wise. Get some more operational experience, not in a uniform, if that's in the cards. But yeah, definitely staying in the game.
What do you think about this modernization program or initiative for the 51s? 51s, 11s, and 52s? And...
I like the idea of this ISR engineer integration stuff, but I think a lot of the diehard 51s got to embrace that better. This is their avenue to be put into the game. And, they got to get it. In my mind, they have to get away from the sysadmin stuff and become equipment experts, because we're skirting around the subject. We're getting into a technology realm to where you need system integration. You can't, independently do a lot of this stuff anymore. So they need to embrace that. Move forward.
Yeah, I've got some 51s up there at the MEF, and I'm still figuring out how best to employ them. They currently function primarily as sysadmins, but I'm starting to identify that they've self-acquired skill sets and capabilities that are in line with the ISR engineer mantra, to the point that for one of them, he's working on a serious game, a video game for training, just on his own. I had the idea of developing a virtual reality fly-through of operational plans, maybe like an avatar of the CG, giving you a terrain walk,
Oh, wow.
voiceover, kind of like a video game.
Yeah.
Synopsis overview of scheme of maneuver in different COAs.
Yeah.
Just kind of throw them some curveballs.
Mm-hmm.
See what you can come up with. I've had experiences with subordinates in the past that had skills that they just picked up on their own, and I've learned that if you could just create enough space for them to run,
Yeah.
just give them the go ahead, the thumbs up, foster that, and champion it for them, they'll surprise you every fucking time.
I feel that, on that note, I feel that some of the more senior staff NCOs that I've been around in my, near career here is a lot of things that I've been hearing lately is these kids can't handle that. They can't handle this. They're not ready for that. And my rebuttal is they speak fucking Chinese. You know what I mean? They can learn this shit. give them the time. Let them run with it. And, know, they're definitely not dumb.
One of the things that's always kind of stuck with me is that the Marines will rise to the level of your expectations,
Mm-hmm.
and then, and by extension, they'll even supersede them given half an opportunity.
Yeah.
And kind of going back to what you said about empowering your sergeants, I lost a shit hot sergeant fairly recently, somewhat. He got selected for for JCAC, so he's doing that thing. But when he left, I had no NCOs. It was me, had a couple of gunnies, and lance corporals. But now I got a few of them that have been promoted to corporal, and so given an opportunity to kind of take the reins and run with it and flex those NCO nuts and really kind of start to get some and treating them different, talking to them differently, kind
Bringing them in. Hey man, what do you think about this?
Exactly. And I think for a few of them, they're I think at a certain point they were like eat the apple, fuck the core kind of thing, but they're starting to come around.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of them asking questions. What about this top? And like, well, you're going to talk about re-enlisting. You got to be all in.
All in all the time.
You can't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and it might be cool to be that guy that's not going to drink the Kool-Aid, but you stick around, you re-enlist, you're making the Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
And it ain't gotta be tropical punch like Top makes it. It might be Purposaurus Rex, right? or whatever your flavor is. If it's the
jungle juice
or you name it. Grape Kool-Aid may be your flavor, but you're gonna make it. And because if not, your Marines are gonna see right through you. And you're doing one or two things. You're either preparing yourself for increasing levels of responsibility or you're not.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the mass sergeants at career course that said the Marines are always looking at you for a sign of weakness.
It's true.
Kind of gave me that paranoid mindset to leadership. So.
And these kids are smart.
Yes, they are.
I say kids, these men.
Yeah. Yeah, they are, but that's what makes it so fun, and so challenging for me. I'm still enjoying getting up in the morning, putting on my uniform, and doing the thing. I think the minute that it stops being that, you have to reassess and reevaluate what you're doing. But for the time being. I mean, I don't think there's any other job that's like this.
No, absolutely not. No, there's even sometimes too where you'll be at work playing with equipment, hanging out with some of the younger guys that are, you know, fired up about it, and you're like, damn, I'm getting paid. You know?
Yeah. Fuck, man, this is like, what, 3 hours on the dot?
Holy shit. Edit this down to a solid 24 minutes.
Nah, man. I think we've there's probably just a little bit of edits that I have to make with the pauses and the breaks, but I think we cleanly went back into them, so it shouldn't be that much of an issue. But Blood Meridian, I'm telling you,
Really?
yeah, it's dark though, Sonny. It's darker than The Road, but of the two, you should read The Road.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Write it down in my notes. Do you take notes on your iPhone?
I do.
When you look through them, there's the funniest shit in there, especially when you're out drinking with your buddies. You're like, what the hell was I trying to write down here?
You know, when you mentioned it about playing chess with Loretta, I don't think I've ever played chess with Liz.
Yeah. It's hard because she's smarter than me. You know? And she's more calculated. My aggression, you know.
You get impatient.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she'll school me. Yeah, we haven't played in a while, though. I'm excited about getting back into it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, get you a clock.
Yeah.
It changes things. You set it to 5 minutes to where it counts down. So the game could conceivably be over in 10 minutes. But if your clock goes down, if you're thinking for over 5 minutes, you lose.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so we start to play, boom, 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 boom. But you make a move, slap, and then your opponent's time starts ticking. They make a move, slap, and you're thinking. Time's going down. Time gets to zero, you lose.
Yeah.
So it changes. It puts some additional pressure and tension there in the game that you wouldn't have otherwise, and also expedites the process, the tempo. So
throw some pain in there, play on the floor. You got to make your moves in the front, leave the rest. You'll do them quick.
yeah, one of the books that I would recommend for your son, if because teaching openings and shit like that, it doesn't play well with the young mind, as well as teaching concepts, right? So like pawn structure, that's important. The center, right? If two countries are going to go to war, the country that can invade the other country and control the majority of the landmass, they're going to have a positional and mobility advantage.
Yeah.
So fighting for that center is key. Developing your minor pieces. One tactic that I used to teach to the kids that used to play well against kids their age was the fianchetto, where you take that second pawn on either side, push it up one, and then you bring that bishop out, and he's now skewering that entire diagonal, that long diagonal through the center to reinforce their pawns. It's a very subtle move, but it could jeopardize the king, because when they castle, that pawn structure isn't solid as it was previously. And when that bishop's gone, it creates a hole if you castle on that side. But as long as they know that going into that fianchetto, it helps. The other thing is teaching them to use their rooks and queen together to make what they call a battery. That helps. And once he starts to see that, it's like, okay. And then of course the fork, right? But yeah, there's a book called Weapons of Chess by Bruce Pandolfini, and this guy was the instructor for, I think it's Josh Whiteskin is his name. He was a young prodigy. They made a movie about him called Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Yeah.
So that kid, he's now a jiu-jitsu phenom. or at least a jiu-jitsu practitioner out in New York. But before he was I don't know if he was an international master or a grandmaster or just a U.S. champion or whatever. But his teacher Bruce Pandolfini wrote that book, Weapons of Chess, and it's pretty good because it's broken down into concepts that he can just pick up and read and then employ on the very next game. It's kind of like a not necessarily a cheat code, but an onboarding process.
Yeah.
Kind of speeds things up. And I would pull a little section out of that book and teach that to the kids, and then set up a position on the demonstration board, show it to them, and then make them start from the starting position from there, where that tactic is being employed, and then let them play from there. It's like scenario training, and they would quickly incorporate that into their own game. But I'm gonna press mute, and with that, we're out.